Blog Talk Radio.
All right, everybody, welcome to a early rising broadcast. We had some technical difficulties. We couldn't do the show last night, but we are here today. And this is a very, very important broadcast. We're dealing with part 2 of the truth about our ancient people around the world. And there's something I want you to think about very, very carefully. And we're going to get to this in a minute. But first of all, I'm going to run these commercials. Okay? Hold on.
Let me make sure I got this one right also. Someone tells you that you must pay them money about your children in the form of child support. They also say they would suspend your driver's license. And they said they would garnish your wages. Who were they talking to? A debtor? Or did they make the mistake and say it to a creditor? When you got married, they said it was a part of that also. Request my free report at thehuckadidelimination.org. That's thehuckadidelimination.org. Let's have some fun. If you'd like to contact us for my free report, and I'll rush it straight to your email box. What about this banking stuff? What's going on in the United States? I tell you what, request my free report at thehuckadidelimination.org. Peace. Okay, everybody, October the 26th, right here in Duval County, Jacksonville, Florida, the Black Vegan Fest will take place. Live bands, live entertainment, professional chefs will teach you how to cook healthy. If you are a vendor, go to www.urbangeoponics.org and sign up. Bring your fishing gear with you. If you're a fisherman, we got the river right in the back of the property. We'll teach you how to grow your own food, teach your children how to do the same thing. You'll learn how to prepare meals healthy. There'll be fun and games for the whole family. October the 26th, the Black Vegan Fest, right here in Jacksonville, Florida. Don't miss it. Make sure you got some cash with you because vendors will be on hand and they'll be selling their wares. October the 26th, the Black Vegan Fest, right here, Jacksonville, Florida. Don't miss it. Be here.
Okay, now let me give you the exact location because this is going to take place the first thing in the morning, which is Saturday, October the 26th. The location is 3607 Reebok Scenic Drive. That's in the 32208 district for you all who are coming from out of town. People will be here from all over the United States. We'll be having a ball. All the heavyweights will be there, live entertainment. And for those of you who like to fish, if you like fishing, bring your fishing gear with you, okay? So you can go right out there in the back of the property and catch a line in the water. River right in the back of the property. Catch you some of them red bass back there, okay? It don't cost you anything to get in, but I recommend that you bring you some cash with you because we got the vendors, they'll be out there and they'll be selling their little wares and stuff, and you want to get you something to take on back to the house with you when you event is over. It's going to start at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and until 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So y'all come on down and enjoy yourself. I look forward to meeting you. If we haven't met before, it's your opportunity. Come on down. I'll get a chance to meet you for the first time. Okay? I'm going back up here and do one more commercial. After that, then we're going
Post-traumatic slave.
Hold on. Wrong button. Here we go.
Let me make sure I got this right. You have a mortgage. You were told the bank would give you a loan for your home. But when you got to the bank, they didn't give you anything or sign anything. But presto changeo, you have a new mortgage. Then you find out your mortgage has been sold to another company. You don't know and don't have any contract with. It seems to me something is wrong. When you walked out the bank, you had some papers in your hand, but no check. Let's get to the bottom, down to the bottom of this kind of stuff. Go to TahakaDebtElimination.org. That's TahakaDebtElimination.org. Let's bring the fraud to a close. How about that? This kind of stuff is going on all over the United States, but most people don't even understand what to do about it. TahakaDebtElimination.org.
All right, we're back. Now, this is what I want to bring to your attention. You know, we have a whole planet. We got land all over the United States. But when it comes to us, people that look like me and you, the narrative is, if you are on the land of, we'll say, Argentina, or if you're on the land of Brazil, you on the land of Cuba, it don't matter where you are, society dictates that you got there because you came from someplace else. You follow me? Because the first thing that was told to you is that civilization started in Africa, okay? And the Africans went into slavery. So that's how you got in China. That's how you got in Brazil. That's how you got in Argentina. Now, prior to that, that means that someone else is the original inhabitants of these lands. You see how this is going? First of all, we're going to tell a lie and say that life itself began in Africa, overlooking the fact that life began all over the planet. We can't say that because that won't adequately describe the people that discriminate against you on their land. So what we got to do is we got to justify you being everywhere second. Okay, when it comes to the United States of America, well, we have the American Native Indians. You see where we're going? And black people came here as a result of slavery. In other words, this land was occupied first by somebody other than you. Well, what we gonna do today is we finna shatter some myths. We finna tear it to pieces this morning. And we're gonna deal with it from a whole different perspective. Let's look at it scientifically for a minute. Let's get the scientific facts. See, we don't want no garbage. We only want the facts, right? Okay. We're going to deal with before and after. And I want you to pay very, very close attention to the lie and the truth. Pay attention. Before and after. Here we go.
The San people of southern Africa, who have lived as hunter-gatherers for thousands of years, are likely to be the oldest populations of humans on Earth, according to the biggest and most detailed analysis of African DNA. The San are directly descended from the original population of early human ancestors who gave rise to all other groups of Africans and to the people of the world. A study of 121 distinct populations of modern-day Africans has found that they are all descended from 14 ancestral populations, and the differences and similarities of their genes closely follows the differences and similarities of their spoken languages. Scientists analyzed the genetic variation within the DNA of more than 3,000 Africans and found that the San people were among the most genetically diverse group, indicating that they are probably the oldest continuous population of humans on the continent and on Earth. The study, published in the journal Science, took 10 years of research involving trips to some of the most remote and dangerous parts of Africa to collect blood samples. The project found modern Africans had the most diverse DNA of all racial groups in the world, confirming the idea that Africa is the birthplace of humanity. Let me say that again. Africa is the birthplace of humanity, said Sarah Tishkoff of the University of Pennsylvania. The scientists also found genetic markers in the DNA of the present-day inhabitants of East Africa living near the Red Sea, which indicated that they belonged to the same ancestral group who migrated out of Africa to populate Asia and the rest of the world. West Africans speaking the Niger/Cordofian language were found to share many genetic traits with African Americans, indicating that they were the ancestors of most of the enslaved Africans sent to the New World. One of the main findings to emerge was the genetic similarity between groups who shared similar languages despite living many thousands of miles from one another. The Sendawi and Hadaza of Tanzania shared common ancestors with the Khoisan speakers of the southern Africa. All three groups speak click languages. An example of a click language is when you hear people of African descent speak like this. Other groups of people with the oldest DNA on the planet include Aboriginal Australians. They are the indigenous inhabitants of the Australian continent and the island of the Tasmania. They are believed to be descended from the first people to leave Africa up to 75,000 years ago. This is according to a 2011 genetic study published in Science magazine. The researchers in the study found evidence in DNA samples that the ancestors of this population split off from the ancestors of the European and Asian populations between 62,000 and 75,000 years ago. These Aboriginal ancestors migrated into South Asia and then into Australia, where they remain. As a result, outside of Africa, the Aboriginal Australians have occupied the same territory continuously longer than any other human populations. This group also includes the people of the Andaman Islands. The Andamanese are the various Aboriginal inhabitants of the Andaman Islands, a territory of India located in the southeastern area of the Bay Bengal. This group of people is believed to have inhabited their Indian island home for up to 55,000 years. The Andamanese are direct descendants of the first modern humans to have inhabited Asia, according to a 2002 Stanford University study. And let's not forget about the Negritos, or the indigenous people who populated Southeast Asia from the Andaman Islands near India to the Philippines. Taiwan and southern China are also included in this distribution, according to a 2004 TaipeiTimes.com article. Genetic testing suggests that the Negritos are at least partly descended from a group who migrated from southern Africa more than 50,000 years ago, according to a 2006 Molecular Biology and Evolution article. And the last group that falls into this category as the oldest DNA on the planet is the Bayaka. Now, these Aboriginal people can be found in Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Republic of the Congo, the Central African Republic, Cameroon, Guinea, Gabon, Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Madagascar, and Zambia. Their genetic markers represent the second most ancient gene pool. Researchers have found that their population derived from a common ancestor 60,000 years ago. So you see, folks, all of these groups of the oldest DNA on the planet, it is proved that they all just happen to be black. Now, as mentioned earlier in this presentation, the Click language is one of the languages spoken by some of these original indigenous people. But one thing that we do want to point out is that many of these people spoke several languages. They spoke more than one language. In fact, many of them spoke 3, 4, and 5 different languages. They spoke those languages, and they still speak those languages. The Black Excellence and Abundance Channel, where Black history is every day.
Hidden for nearly 15,000 years, there's a new discovery that's changing what we think we know about how the Americas were settled.
So there's this team at Florida State University that discovered stone tools alongside mastodon bones. That means they found the oldest known site of human life in the southeastern U.S. Consider that. Think about it for just a second. We're joined now by Florida State University Assistant Professor Jesse Holligan. Professor Holligan, good morning to you.
Good morning to you guys.
So put into just layman's waking up Saturday morning, eating my Wheaties terms, what this means, the discovery of these tools.
So these bones and artifacts show that people were in Florida 1,500 years earlier than a lot of people accept the Americas were colonized, and more importantly, a lot of us were taught that the Americas were colonized by some folks coming through an ice-free corridor from Alaska through Canada into North and South America around 13,500 years ago. That's what most high school textbooks say. That ice-free corridor wasn't open until 14,000 years ago. This site is 500 years older than that, and in Florida, which is by any stretch of the imagination, kitty corner across the continent from Alaska. So it means that we really have to re-examine how and when the Americas were colonized.
So this is on its face fascinating, but when I look at the pictures and the images here, it's underwater.
Yes.
It's some underwater sinkhole. Is that what we're looking at here?
Yes, it's a sinkhole in the bottom of the Osceola River. The people weren't, however, scuba diving 14,500 years ago. This was a site that would have been an isolated pond about 130 miles from the coast at the time people were here 14,500 years ago, because sea levels were almost 300 feet lower then, and Florida was nearly twice as big.
Okay, so we're just learning of this this morning. As a non-archaeologist, I'm excited about this, but tell me, having discovered this, what you felt, what went through your mind when you realized the implications of this discovery.
Oh, it was so exciting. Though, to be fair, we were building on research done by a number of archaeologists in the 80s and 90s who had already done some excavations at the sinkhole. They found a tusk with human-made, they said, cut marks, but it wasn't widely accepted by the archaeological community, so we were actually there to reevaluate their claims. And so finding the stone knife that we discovered really showed that they had been correct. The stone knife, there's absolutely no way that could be made by nature, whereas some people had proposed that the marks on the cut could have been caused by elephants, and by elephants I mean mastodons stomping around on the tusk later on, and our knife showed that there's no way that wasn't done by people. So it wasn't that we lucked into this layer, we were really building on some previous research, but that being said, I don't think any of us slept the night that we found the biface. Everybody was very, very, very excited, and it's been so rewarding to get to work in that sink and find these things.
Well, I imagine you all were very excited. Assistant professor at University of Florida State University. Let me get that right. Florida State University, because you can't mess those two up. Can't conflate those.
I know.
Professor Jesse Holligan, thanks so much for sharing the information, the discovery, and the excitement with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.
I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty, but thou art rich. Welcome to the Black Excellence and Abundance Channel. It is often taught that black people first arrived in the Americas during the slave trade, but that history is in the process of being rewritten, as archaeologists continue to find evidence that black people occupied the American continent before the Bering Strait was crossed by the Mongolian Asians. According to the BBC documentary series Ancient Voices and some scholars, these people were black. Here is some of the evidence that has been presented to prove black people were the first to populate the Americas. Human skulls have been uncovered in Central and South America that are 9,000 to 12,000 years old, among the oldest skulls in the Americas. Walter Nees, an archaeologist from the University of Sao Paulo, has taken extensive measurements from dozens of skulls, including the oldest, from a young woman whom the archaeologist named Luzia, discovered in Lagoa Santa Minas Gerais, Brazil. The measurement showed that Luzia was anything but mongoloid, he says. Reconstruction of Luzia's 12,000-year-old skull by forensic artist Richard Neve from the University of Manchester. In the broadcast segment, the scientists concluded that the dimensions of the prehistoric skulls found in Brazil matched those of the Aboriginal people of Australia and Melanesia. Stone tools and charcoal from the Pedra Furada sites in Brazil show evidence of human habitation as long ago as 50,000 years. In addition, radiocarbon tests of carbonized plants, remains, and artifacts unearthed along the Savannah River in Allendale County, South Carolina, indicate that humans inhabited North America at least 50,000 years ago, long before the last ice age. The tests were conducted by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear in 2004. Cave paintings found at Serra de Capivara in remote northeast Brazil also provided evidence of the existence of a much older people. The rock art, which shows images of giant armadillos, a species extinct before the last ice age, is dated to around 25,000 years ago. Some eminent rock art specialists are proposing an even earlier date, perhaps as far back as 36,000 years ago. The finding challenges the widely held view that the Americas were first colonized by people from the north via the Bering Strait at around 10,000 BC, moving south to inhabit Central and South America in the millennia thereafter. The Bradshaw cave paintings found in Kimberley, Australia, a region at the northern tip of Western Australia, offer evidence the Aboriginals may have built boats capable of making the journey, 8,450 miles across the ocean. Grahame Walsh, an expert on Australian rock art, found the oldest painting of a boat anywhere in the world. The style of the art means it is at least 17,000 years old, but it could be up to 50,000 years old. The high prow of the boat in the art is a crucial detail because it would have been unnecessary for vessels used in calm inland waters, suggesting it was used on the open ocean. The skull of Luzia that was prominently displayed at the National Museum has been attracting crowds and controversy in equal measure since it was first unveiled. After 2 decades in storage, the fossilized cranium has now been identified by Brazilian scientists as the oldest human remains ever recorded in the Western Hemisphere. The skull is that of a young woman nicknamed Luzia, who is believed to have roamed the savanna of south-central Brazil approximately 11,500 years ago. Even more startling, a reconstruction of her cranium undertaken in Brazil indicates that her features appear to be Negroid rather than Mongoloid, suggesting that the Western Hemisphere may have initially been settled not only earlier than thought, but by people distinct from the ancestors of today's North and South American Indians. We can no longer say that the first colonizers of the Americas came from the north of Asia, as previous models have proposed, said Dr. Walter Neves, an anthropologist at the University of Sao Paulo, who made the initial discovery along with an Argentine colleague, Hector Pucciarelli. This skeleton is nearly 2,000 years older than any skeleton ever found in the Americas, and it does not look like those of the American Indians or North Asians. Archaeologists here and abroad say the find is potentially very important. Until Luzia, named as a playful homage to Lucy, the 3.2 million-year-old human ancestor found in Africa, Luzia's discovery at a location in the state of Minas Gerais called Lapa Vermelha is consistent, however, with recent findings at the celebrated Monte Verde site in southern Chile. Their evidence of human habitation as early as 12,500 years ago, including stone tools and a footprint, has been uncovered, though no human remains have yet been found. The finds, along with the recent discoveries in North America like those of the so-called Kennewick Man and Spirit Cave Man, are forcing a reassessment of long-established theories as to the settling of the Americas. Based on such evidence, scientists suggest that Luzia belonged to a nomadic people who began arriving in the New World as early as 15,000 years ago. About one-third of Luzia's skeleton has been recovered, enough to indicate that she appears to have perished in an accident or perhaps even from an animal attack. She was in her 20s when she died, stood just under 5 feet tall, and was part of a group of hunter-gatherers who appeared to have subsisted largely on whatever fruits, nuts, and berries they came across in their meanderings, plus the occasional piece of meat. Skeletal material of this age is extraordinarily rare, said Dr. David J. Mietzer, a professor of anthropology at Southern Methodist University and expert of the Paleo-Indian populations of North America, both here and in South America, so I am delighted to note that something of this antiquity is popping up. Luzia herself was originally discovered in 1975. The skull was buried under more than 40 feet of mineral deposits and debris, separated from the rest of the skeleton but otherwise in remarkably good condition. A computerized image of Luzia's skull was sent to Richard Nieve, a forensic specialist on the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Manchester in England, with a request that he reconstruct her face. It was in much better shape than many other forensic subjects we have had to do. Mr. Nieve said in a telephone interview what he ended up with when he finished was a face with the features one associated with Negroid skulls, particularly the nose and jaw. When you do this sort of work, it is very important to have no preconceived ideas, Mr. Nieve said. I personally would stick my neck out and say it is a conclusive support for his findings and demonstrate without any doubt at all that Luzia is of non-Mongoloid origins. She is definitely who we consider to be as a young black woman. When her remains were discovered, Luzia was alone, but more than 40 other skeletons that appear to be from the same general period have been found in a nearby area called the Lagoa Santa, and scientists in Brazil hope to be able to test Dr. Neves' theory by doing radiocarbon dating on at least some of them. There are a large number of skeletons at this site, some of them in better condition than that of Luzia, Dr. Pruz said. There is a great density of skeletons there, buried in an organized fashion, and so we conclude this was a cemetery for them, perhaps the oldest in the Americas. Initial indications are that these skeletons indeed have many of the same facial features and other characteristics that first made Luzia stand out, which means they were black as well. We see this pattern with other skeletons of the same age. From the Lagoa Santa site, Dr. Powell said, we have seen 37 of them now, and they all have this sort of unusual appearance.
And of course, the only reason they find it to be unusual is because they never expected to discover that the bones of the oldest persons found in the Americas to be that of black people.
In an effort to test the theory that Lucia belonged to a people ethnically distinct from the ancestors of modern North and South American Indians, scientists have also begun DNA sequencing in the Lagoa Santa skeletons. Dr. Sergio Pena, a geneticist at the Federal University of Minas Gerais, is conducting one set of tests while other samples have been sent to the Max Planck Anthropological Institute in Germany.
The Black Excellence and Abundance Channel, where black history is every day.
Thanks for watching. We ask that you please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And remember, thou art rich.
All right. There you have it. Now, at this point, what has to happen is people will, in order for us to, first of all, we are not going to hear somebody come on the international news media, world news, your archaeologists and scientists get on national TV, on a national broadcast. None of the journalists are going to get on TV and say, okay, we made a mistake and the original people found in the Americas were you and not people that we claim to be the American and natives and all this right here. Nobody's going to broadcast it. What we're going to do, what society is going to do, even after I put this information out again, is we're going to act like they didn't hear it so that we can maintain the lie. We got to figure out another way to prop up the lie. We can't come out and replace the lie with the truth. We can't do that. That's going to mess up everything. So what we got to do is act like we didn't hear it. Okay? Now, what we want to do now is, because see, I don't usually do this, but this is so powerful that I don't think I have a choice but to do it again. But before I do it again, I want to add a little bit more 411 for you to consider. Okay? Y'all hold on. Hold your hat.
In my personal opinion, the Congo Empire was one of the most powerful military states in all of Africa. This African empire is grossly underrated. Despite their internal struggles, they still managed to discourage attacks and even fend off full-blown invasion for quite some time. Even though the Battle of Mbumbi is known as a defeat for the Congo Empire by Portugal, very few people ever highlight what happened afterwards at the Battle of Mbandikasi, in which the Congo ruler at the time defeated the Portuguese and won back lost territory. This defeat was so bad that over time, thousands of enslaved Congo citizens were returned from Brazil back to Congo. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. And if you like this content, you can support the Home Team on patreon.com. There you can find sources and more in-depth courses on African history. And with a word from my sponsors, there's a new social media platform dedicated to educating and uplifting our people. No longer do we have to be censored for speaking our truth. Our Black Truth is Black owned and operated, and a place where you can post your businesses and even monetize your content. You can download the app at Google Play or the App Store and you can visit the website at ourbblacktruth.com. Links to everything in the description box below. The Battle of Mbumbi in 1622 was a terrible event for the citizens of Congo. A power-hungry Portuguese governor at the time sought to take full control of the African empire with his invasion. After the defeat, thousands of Congo citizens were enslaved and taken to Brazil. Some historians have a tendency to end the story there, but upon revisiting this history, scholars like John Thornton and Andrea Mosterman discovered a little-known fact about that brief war. Congo not only retaliated, but they were able to defeat the Portuguese and reconquer some lost territory. In a sense, this could be considered a Congolese reconquista, if you will. The Congo Empire first established a relationship with Portugal in 1483, when Portuguese sailors under Diogo Cao arrived at the Congo River and established a long-lasting relationship with the Mwene Congo, or King Nzinga Nkuwu. Christianity was introduced for the first time to the Bakongo elite, and from there, the ruling class viewed Portugal as a sort of Christian brother, which was obviously their first mistake. Almost a century later, this Christian brotherhood would take its first tangible form with a request from King Alvaro I of Congo asking the Portuguese for military assistance against the so-called Jagas. The Jagas apparently forced him to abandon his capital. True colors were revealed immediately after the request, as the Portuguese were more than willing to send troops, but they wanted a colony as well. Congo unfortunately granted Portugal that colony, which later became known as Luanda. Luanda was important to Portugal because they could now have a foundation to operate in for their colonization efforts. The alliance between Portugal and Congo was still strong even at the end of the 16th century, but Portuguese ambitions to further their colonial development controlled trade from the whole coast, including seeking the exclusion of Dutch merchants from Congo and capture slaves in warfare, put it under great stress. The breakdown in the relationship with Congo came to a boiling point once Portuguese governors in the region allied with a very powerful African group known as the Mbangala. Scholars aren't exactly sure as to the identity of the Mbangala, but they were known as very fierce warriors and were feared throughout the region. This Portuguese-Mbangala union was a match made in heaven for the Portuguese as they conquered the kingdom of Ndongo. This event was extremely traumatic as thousands of Ndongo inhabitants were enslaved and taken to Brazil. The torture of that invasion is just too graphic to describe here, but just know that the Mbangala wreaked havoc all over the kingdom. This flawless victory and union gave the new Portuguese governor, João Sousa, the confidence needed to take on Congo itself. His first target was a vassal of Congo located north of Luanda. This place was known as a refuge for runaway slaves. Sousa's continued advance led to the total breakdown of Congo-Portuguese relations at the time, eventually leading to the Battle of Mbumbi. Sousa was power-hungry. With his African allies, he defeated Congo at the Battle of Mbumbi, enslaving not only the average citizens, but also the very elite. It was so bad that even Portuguese Jesuits spoke out against it, including Portuguese merchants living in Congo. Again, the Jesuits stressed the interests of Portugal and Portuguese because, in their long letter, they include.
When you hear about Brazil, the most common things that come to mind are its natural beauty and cultural riches. The country boasts the Amazon rainforest, the Pantanal wetlands, and breathtaking beaches like Copacabana and Ipanema in Rio de Janeiro. These iconic landscapes are often featured in travel documentaries, advertisements, and films, contributing to Brazil's image as a paradise for nature enthusiasts and adventure seekers. The country is also famous for its music genres like samba and bossa nova, its lively carnival celebrations, and its delicious cuisine. Unfortunately, this is all but a facade that fails to portray the real issues with a country that has its ties to the Atlantic slave trade. While Brazil has long been hailed as a beautiful and exotic world destination, a place where carnival thrives and soccer is a religion, it is a nation that harbors a deep-seated hatred for its black population. Despite the country's mosaic of ethnicities, Afro-Brazilians continue to be marginalized, underrepresented, and systematically excluded from critical aspects of Brazilian society. From education to housing, the justice system to political representation, and even the media, the lived experiences of black Brazilians expose a troubling and persistent reality: Brazil's historical legacy of racism and inequality. In this video, we are going to reveal what it's truly like to be black in Brazil, peeling back the layers of Brazil's complex social fabric to expose the stark truths of what it truly means to be black in a country whose progress was built on the backs of African slaves. From examining the challenges faced in accessing quality education to the struggles of finding decent housing, we will shed light on the multifaceted experiences of Afro-Brazilians, whose resilience and determination shine despite the formidable obstacles they encounter. Before we get right into the video, please smash the like button and subscribe to the channel to keep informed of our eye-opening black narrative. Brazil is a melting point of cultures of indigenous peoples, Africans brought over during the transatlantic slave trade, European colonizers, and waves of immigrants from all corners of the globe. The roots of Brazil's racial diversity trace back to its indigenous population. Long before the arrival of European colonizers, the land was inhabited by a multitude of indigenous tribes, each with its own distinct language, culture, and customs. These native peoples played a vital role in shaping the Brazilian landscape and culture. However, their population dramatically declined due to diseases brought by the Europeans and violent conflicts, leading to the displacement and marginalization of many indigenous communities. The arrival of Portuguese explorers in the early 16th century marked the beginning of a new era in Brazil's history. The Portuguese colonization introduced European culture, language, and religion to the region. This influx of Portuguese settlers laid the foundation for a predominantly European-descended population that would become known as the White Brazilians. The intermarriage between Portuguese settlers and indigenous people gave rise to a mestizo population known as the caboclos. One of the most significant factors in Brazil's racial diversity is the Atlantic slave trade. Millions of African men, women, and children were forcibly brought to Brazil to work on plantations, in mines, and as domestic servants. The legacy of this brutal system is evident in the substantial Afro-Brazilian population. Over time, African cultural elements profoundly influenced Brazilian music, dance, religion, and cuisine. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Brazil saw an influx of Asian immigrants, primarily from Japan. These immigrants arrived in search of better economic opportunities and established themselves in various regions of Brazil. The Japanese-Brazilian community, known as the Nikkei, has made significant contributions to the country's cultural and economic life. Their presence adds another layer to Brazil's diverse racial composition. While Brazil's racial diversity is a source of pride, it also comes with challenges. The color of one's skin greatly determines their chances of success in the country, which means for black Brazilians and Afro-Brazilians, it is not the best world to live in. This divide stems from a long history that began after the abolition of slavery in 1888. Rather than actively working to integrate black people into society, the Brazilian authorities crafted a carefully constructed narrative of racial harmony. They aimed to portray Brazil as a unique haven where all races coexist peacefully. However, this narrative hides a painful reality that many Brazilians, particularly black and mixed-race individuals, continue to suffer. An estimated 91 million Brazilians are of African ancestry, according to the 2010 census, which found that more than half, 50.7% of the Brazilian population now identified as preto, black, or pardo, mixed ethnicity. Many live in quilombos, which were created by fugitive African slaves during the 17th and 18th century. According to the Fundação Cultural Palmares, there are around 16 million of these descendants, known as quilombolas, in around 5,000 rural communities across Brazil. The highest concentrations are in once inaccessible areas of Bahia, Para, Mato Grosso, Goiás, and Minas Gerais. Quilombos also exist in major cities like Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. Quilombos have been recognized since the mid-1990s. Despite their sizable demographic, Afro-Brazilians still face major disadvantages and institutionalized discrimination. The severe inequalities faced by Afro-descendants are reflected in every area of their lives, from health and education to employment and wealth. Being black in Brazil entails a complex and often challenging journey that spans generations, reaching back to the end of slavery and persisting to the present day. The legacy of slavery left a mark on the lives of Afro-Brazilians, shaping their experiences and influencing their socioeconomic status, access to opportunities, and overall quality of life. The formal abolition of slavery in Brazil came with the signing of the Lei Áurea, Golden Law. However, this watershed moment did not mark the end of the struggles faced by newly emancipated Afro-Brazilians. The promise of freedom was marred by the harsh reality of economic and social exclusion. Many former slaves were left without land, education, or means of support, effectively pushing them into a cycle of poverty. In the years following abolition, Afro-Brazilians continued to face widespread discrimination, prejudice, and economic marginalization. Despite being free, they were denied access to education, decent employment, and political representation. The legacy of slavery lingered in the form of racial segregation and deeply ingrained biases that persisted in Brazilian society. Being black in Brazil often comes with a sense of invisibility within society, where systemic biases and prejudices persist. This invisibility is frequently reflected in media representation, where black voices, stories, and perspectives may be underrepresented or misrepresented. Additionally, political offices have historically not done enough to address the specific needs and concerns of the black community. In media, the underrepresentation of black Brazilians perpetuates stereotypes and contributes to their marginalization. It can lead to a lack of diverse narratives and perspectives, reinforcing a limited and biased view of black lives. Black individuals may struggle to find relatable role models in the media, which can have a profound impact on self-esteem and aspirations. Media representations often perpetuated harmful stereotypes about black Brazilians, depicting them as criminals or reinforcing negative biases. These portrayals further marginalized Afro-Brazilians, creating a damaging cycle of discrimination and stigmatization. In political offices, the concerns and experiences of black Brazilians have often been overlooked or sidelined. Policies addressing racial inequality may be inadequate or insufficiently enforced, leaving many black communities without the support they need. Political representation of black individuals can also be limited, making it challenging to advocate for change from within the system. Structural racism has become deeply entrenched in Brazil's social fabric, with Afro-Brazilians disproportionately affected. They were relegated to the margins of society, living in impoverished urban neighborhoods and facing limited access to healthcare, education, and other essential services. The color of their skin often determined their socioeconomic status, reinforcing a cycle of inequality. Education. Being black in Brazil often means facing significant challenges when it comes to accessing quality education. These challenges are not a reflection of one's family background or personal aspirations, but are deeply rooted in systemic inequalities that persist within the Brazilian education system. For many black Brazilians, the pursuit of quality education can be an uphill battle from the outset. Despite having the same aspirations and potential as their white counterparts, they often encounter a range of barriers that hinder their educational opportunities. Disparities in educational opportunities persist, with Afro-Brazilians more likely to attend underfunded schools and face inadequate resources. Many Afro-Brazilian students attend schools in underprivileged neighborhoods that lack basic resources such as textbooks, well-trained teachers, and adequate facilities. In contrast, schools in wealthier areas, which predominantly serve white students, often enjoy better resources and infrastructure. In Rio de Janeiro, a study conducted by the Instituto Brasileiro de Geografia e Estatística, Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, revealed that schools located in predominantly black neighborhoods receive fewer financial resources from the government compared to those in predominantly white neighborhoods. This disparity directly affects the quality of education Afro-Brazilian students receive. Afro-Brazilians face disparities in both school enrollment and completion rates. A higher percentage of Afro-Brazilian children drop out of school compared to their white peers. This phenomenon can be attributed to a range of factors, including socioeconomic barriers, a lack of support systems, and the persistent effects of historical discrimination. The main Brazilian university in terms of research, number of students, and quality of education is the University of Sao Paulo. The way of selecting the students is done through a rigorous college entrance exam in which competition is extremely difficult. At the university, 79.5% of the students are white versus 1% of blacks. Only 6% of the students are mulattoes, while 12.9% are Orientals. The population of blacks and mulattoes in the state of Sao Paulo amounts to 33.1%, while the yellow population does not exceed 1.8%. Thus, blacks and mulattoes are underrepresented in the University of Sao Paulo by almost 5 times. Income disparities. Being black in Brazil often comes with the harsh reality that earning the best wages and accessing the most lucrative job opportunities can be elusive aspirations. This is not due to any inherent limitations on the part of black Brazilians, but is deeply rooted in systemic racial inequalities that persist within the country's workforce and industries. Income inequality in Brazil is glaring, with Afro-Brazilians consistently earning less than their white counterparts. This income gap persists across various industries and professions. According to data from the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, in 2020, the average monthly income of white workers was approximately 73% higher than that of black workers. This income disparity underscores the systemic bias within the labor market. Whites earn on average 5.25 times the minimum salary. Blacks earn 2.43 times the salary, with mulattoes 2.54 times the minimum salary at the end of every working month. Therefore, the average income of a white person is more than double the average income of a black person. In many cases, black Brazilians find themselves disproportionately represented in lower-paying, less prestigious jobs. They may encounter limited opportunities for career advancement.
The community of Afro-descended people in the Americas have many heroes we seldom hear about. Heroes such as Gaspar Yanga of Mexico, Ganga Zumba of Brazil, and many more. Their stories exemplify the pursuit of freedom, liberty, and the fight against tyranny, principles we seem to hold dear in the Western world. The absence of these African heroes in popular discourse is precisely why Afro-descended people need to aggregate our knowledge, highlighting the brilliance and majesty of African historical figures. So today, I wanted to speak about one of the most successful formerly enslaved Africans in world history, King Baiano. Animation can be quite expensive, so if you'd like to contribute to the continued production of this kind of content, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link to Patreon is in the description box below. The role of African men in early Spanish America was surprisingly diverse. Unfortunately, popular narratives frequently highlight the enslaved status of African people, despite there being some who discovered different avenues to freedom. African men in particular were able to do this because in the 16th century, Spain had not completely consolidated their power in the Americas. Thus, some Africans were able to acquire varying forms of freedom. One of the ways in which African men accomplished this was by becoming a so-called black conquistador. Most of them were conscripted, but some were able to gain their freedom. Another way was by becoming a pirate, gaining freedom through the open sea. And yet another was escaping to the mountains or countryside, establishing independent maroon settlements, becoming sovereign rulers or kings in their own right. In 16th century Panama, King Baiano became one of those men. He was believed to have been a Mandinka man, or at least from one of the Mande-speaking ethnic groups. In 1552, he was reportedly among 400 enslaved Africans taken to Panama. Fortunately, the ship he was on became shipwrecked off the coast of Panama. He and other Africans were able to escape to the shore. Something was special about Baiano because he quickly became a leader among the men and a formidable opponent for the Spanish, spearheading the largest revolt against Spanish colonial rule in the 16th century. Sources written by Spanish authors described Baiano as a very handsome and strong man who spoke Spanish well. His Spanish opponents assumed that Baiano had been a king.
Afro-Argentines, as the black people in Argentina are popularly known, formed a significant part of the Argentine population in the 18th century. In 1778, according to a census by its Spanish colonial masters, black people made up 37% of the total population of the South American country. By 1857, 79 years later, the black population had dropped to 15%. Today, a greater population of Argentina is white. Only 5% of Argentina is black, the lowest of all Latin American countries. As a matter of fact, their numbers have reduced drastically that it would be near impossible to see a black Argentine in sports, journalism, politics, and so on. So, what led to the reduction and near eradication of the black population in Argentina? The history of Afro-Argentines dates back to the 16th century when black people, feet chained, were brought from their homelands in Africa to be traded as slaves in Argentina. At the time, Buenos Aires, the capital city of Argentina, had just been founded and trading was the main commercial activity. As the years went by, the numbers of slaves being traded in and out of Buenos Aires increased drastically. As of the 1600s, the slave trade industry had grown so much that about 70% of all trading in Buenos Aires involved importing slaves from Africa. It was only a matter of time before slave trading became a legalized trade in Argentina, extending far into the 1800s. Although the slave trade in Argentina ended in 1813, slavery itself lasted until 1853 before it was finally abolished. When one looks at Buenos Aires now, in its clothing of architectural and structural beauty, it is hard to imagine that it was once an ugly sight during the long years of the black slave trade and trafficking which increased the black population in the colony. Data recorded in the 1778 census carried out in Argentina by the then Spanish colonial masters showed that about 30% of the people in Buenos Aires were black. By the time the slave trade was ended in the 19th century, black people accounted for 1/3 of the Argentine population, even though many of them were descended from slaves and some were still in slavery. Not only were the blacks a robust community, but they were also involved in and actively influenced the Argentine culture with their African ways. For instance, the popular tango musical style and dance, which was developed in Argentina, has its roots traced to the African country of Angola. The belief that black ancestry or descent does not exist in Argentina is expected from a country that claims so much whiteness. This belief sets a logical problem against the claims that the erasure of black history occurred in Argentina. After all, if black people never existed in the country, how could they have disappeared? As it appears, some are still ignorant of facts concerning the history of Afro-Argentines. Nevertheless, this ignorance does not invalidate the fact that a black community existed in Argentina but was erased around the early 20th century. Perhaps a better question would be, was the black account erased from Argentine history, or did Argentina erase its black people from history? One thing is certain, black people did not just vanish from the historical accounts of Argentina. They were written out of it. The real question to be asked then is, how? How was the whole racial population washed out of history? The history-loving mind is so curious that it seeks answers to this question. It is no surprise then that many have tried to give different answers regarding the disappearance of black populace in Argentina, some less satisfactory than others. Truly, the disappearance of the black population occurred in different ways. Few were circumstantial, but some were intentional. These ways are different, yet when combined, give a well-rounded explanation of how Argentina erased its black people from history. These combined methods were demonstrated acts under the umbrella of whitening. Whitening can simply be described as an act of reimagining a race towards whiteness. The rationale behind this act is that there exists some societal privileges that benefit white people compared to people of other races. This ideology holds that the above is true even if both races are exposed to the same social, economic, and political conditions. By implication, it means that black people are of a race inferior to the whites. Also, by extension, the ideology is backed by the belief that black people should be developed by the gradual loss of their black genes through marriages to whites and birthing children who, based on their whiter skin, will be closer to the white construct and standard. Initially, the usage of the word whitening in Argentina was little about color and more about overall attitude and cultural behavior. It made no difference, however, because both interpretations implied led to the discriminative behavior exhibited by white Argentines towards people who were not white. Brushing aside the underlying issues of inequality and racial discrimination, the Argentinian government subtly believed and acted out this ideology. However subtly they may have acted, it is evident today that Argentina has been whitewashed. For almost a decade, the Argentine War of Independence, which started in 1810, was fought, and in 1816, Argentina gained its independence from Spain. It is well within the realm of possibilities that black men who were at the time still slaves would have been forced into the battlefront and became the greater casualty. Notable among these slave soldiers was Maria Remedios de Val, who fought in the Argentine Independence War along with her husband and sons. Originally, one of the popular answers as to how blacks were erased from Argentine history is the idea that these 18th century wars claimed the lives of many black men who represented the larger part of the black population. Admittedly, black lives were lost in the many wars that happened in Argentina. However, to claim these events solely account for the disappearance of blacks in Argentina is simply an exaggeration, because after the abolishment of slavery in 1853, the black population still made up about 1/3 of the population. It is unlikely, therefore, that the wars were responsible for the drastic fall in the black population after the 1800s. Such exaggerated details should be expected when historical accounts have been altered and consequently are not trustworthy. Indeed, this exaggerated version is what some believe to be true as to how the black population faded out in Argentina. Very little is known about the state of the black population in Buenos Aires and Argentina after the wars. So poorly considered were the blacks that it appeared the government thought them too insignificant to be included in the national census. Was the black population that low, or were black people just neglected? Perhaps this was the initiating act of what later became racial profiling. At any rate, if the black population really died out due to the wars, though this claim is unsupported by statistics, it is even greater evidence of Argentina's cruel intent and effort to whiten its history. After all, murder is in one's heart before it is in the hand. Resulting from the loss of black lives in the wars, the number of black men who represented the larger part of the black population was greatly reduced. Accordingly, women became the larger part, and as a result, what was once a fairly balanced ratio of women to men had become disproportionate. This, amongst other things, facilitated the rise of interracial marriages in Argentina. Since the number of black men was on the decrease, black women were left with two choices: get married to Argentine men or contest for the few African men who were left. Some chose, if that would be considered a choice, the latter. What is strange are the conclusions that were drawn from this choice. Some have concluded that blacks wanted a place where they belonged, So, after the abolishment of slavery, many of them migrated from Argentina to nearby countries with more predominant acceptance of black people, such as Brazil. Apparently, this conclusion was arrived at because some families were in fact purely black. However, this theory is unsatisfactory and insufficient on its own to explain how the black population completely fizzled out of the history of Argentina. Even if it's true, is migrating out of a country tantamount to migrating out of the country's history? Well, this scheme believes so. Arguably, one of the most subtle acts taken by the Argentine government to wash its history of blackness was a call for European immigrants. This is a fact attested to by statistics which link 2/3 of the population of Argentina to European immigration. In the 19th century, following the series of wars, Argentina made the call for immigrants from Europe, probably due to the low population of the country that had resulted from the loss of lives in the wars. In 1853, the constitution currently in use by Argentina was approved. Though it had seen the abolishment of slavery, the 25th article of the constitution was that which officially facilitated immigration into Argentina without any form of barrier. This limitless access into the country is rightly perceived to be suspicious. Whether at that point Argentina had intended that the European immigration be used as a means to whitewash its history, as it was already nearing that point, it eventually did. With more European immigrants in Argentina, the prospects for a whiter country were raised. At last, there were more white people to dilute the growing black population, and gradually a new mixed race was created. However, racial profiling would be unavoidable in a country that prides itself deeply on its European heritage, and such was the case in Argentina. The new generation of people born through interracial marriages was referred to as the non-whites, a superficial term that embodied the government's denial of racial diversity which was present in Argentina. If placed on a ranking system, non-whites would be a little higher than pure blacks and whites higher than both. In this way, Argentina sets the stage for the commencement of its whitening, with interracial marriages particularly functioning as the whitening cream. One can understand why some blacks sought interracial marriages to climb up the social ladder. What other alternative existed in the face of discrimination? Amongst other lack of rights, black people could not attend universities before the abolition of the slavery in 1853. White children had a longer number of schooling years than black children, and black people had no access to healthcare due to their poor economic and financial state. The rate of infant mortality was higher for black children when compared to whites. The black community lost a higher percentage of its population to cholera and the yellow fever epidemic, which broke out in the years 1864 and 1871 respectively. These health challenges were partly responsible for the disappearance of the black community in Argentina. In like fashion, children with mixed parents of white and non-white were seen to have become somewhat whiter, as evident in their lighter skin tone, and could enjoy rights exclusive to the whites. Thus, their social status and that of their descent were raised with a lesser chance of being discriminated against. At this point, black women had two options: become whiter and access more rights, or continue to be black and suffer discrimination. That was not the first or the last time they would face this alternative, and their choice was always the same. The bait had been designed so cleverly by the Argentine government that anyone would bite. Accompanied with the whitening was a loss in black identity, not just in genetic makeup and skin color, but in consciousness also. That 90% of the people in Argentina today identify to be white is proof that many Argentines are ignorant of their ancestry, so much so that they can't tell if they are indeed white or are descended from Afro-Argentines. The marked racial discrimination that has fed Argentina's erasure of its black history is astounding, and it has caused multiple reverberations for generations. While the lives of black people were lost, the black consciousness and black accounts were also lost to history. In recent times, sequel to the re-emergence of the black community in the 20th century, Afro-Argentines continue to fight to bring back and keep the black account in Argentine history by telling their stories. A memorable feat was achieved when November 8 was assigned by the Argentine legislation to celebrate Maria Remedios de Val, the Afro-Argentine soldier who fought for Argentina during the Argentine War of Independence in the 1810s. Since 2013, November 8, officially referred to as the National Day of Afro-Argentines and African Culture, has served as a day when Argentina revisits and celebrates its African roots. Still, the question of whether Argentina is truly a white country or not persists. This question does not fit into a black or white structure, but one thing is certain: white Argentina will find it very hard to completely get rid of the black footprints in its archives, which is a good thing, especially for the Afro-Argentines who have been denied a substantial part of their ancestral history.
All right, there you have it. Now, what we are witnessing here is the same type of behavioral patterns around the world when it comes to you and me, the people that look like me and you. It's amazing why you are treated the way you're treated. Now, don't get me wrong. Now, there are some places that you can go that's friendly towards you. Be glad to see you. And these places are, in my opinion, a small token, a small part of the way the world should be. So what we want to do is we want to take a look at some of these places. And you might want to write them down. So if you're going to go on an extended vacation, you might want to consider going to these places. Okay? Now we're going to take a little quick break, and we will be right back. Y'all hold on. we back, y'all. Okay, let's take a look at some of the places that you may find okay. All right, you might want to visit some of these places. So y'all hold on a minute.
What up, y'all? Traveling as an African American, where is it the safest? Where are the people the most friendly towards us? And I've been to about 69 countries all around the world, and this is a question that people often ask me. So this is a pretty hot topic, so let's get into it. You know, traveling as African American can get pretty interesting. Sometimes you go to countries where they actually never have seen African Americans, so they may stare for a very extended period of time. Sometimes you'll see people like snicker to who they're walking with, and you gotta wonder why are they staring so much? And sometimes, we can be offended, we can take it as disrespect, but naturally, again, because they never see black people and they only see, our people on TV, they kind of wonder wow, it's like a shocker. And again, I've had different type of experiences, so I'm going to share with you guys 7 countries that in my experience have been the most friendly towards African Americans. All right, number 7, we're at Thailand. Thailand is extremely friendly towards African Americans. I absolutely love Thailand. The cost of living out there is really low, so you can literally get a full body massage for less than $20, right, for an hour. But needless to say, I feel as though they treat African Americans like celebrities, right? They just do. They always want to take a picture with us. They're always just welcoming us with open arms. They call it the land of smiles, and I truly feel an amazing just energy and experience, whenever being in Thailand. And again, the food is amazing, the culture is amazing, the weather is amazing. And listen, I got nothing bad to say about Thailand at all. And I've been to Koh Samui, Phuket, and Bangkok. And again, there's so many more places that I do want to go to when I go back to Thailand. But in my experience, when it comes to African Americans, Thailand is just an absolutely amazing place. All right, coming in at number 6, we have Germany. Germany has a thriving Afro-German community. They're heavily pushing just diversity all throughout the country. And me personally, I had an amazing New Year's Eve in Germany, specifically celebrated in Berlin. And Berlin is very similar to New York City. It has a big city vibe. And Germany's it's just an amazing place, right? Again, it's very diverse. The people are very just open, great. I've connected with some amazing people in Germany. They have a good sense of culture. The food is good out there. They have good, just nightlife. And again, there's a lot of great things to do in Germany. And as an African American, I truly feel like that's a country where they're very friendly towards us. And if you haven't been to Germany before, I would recommend it. All right, coming in at number 5, we have the United Kingdom. Down under. But listen, man, if you haven't been to the United Kingdom, it's such an amazing place, and it's such a multicultural destination. I've been to London so many times, and every time I go to London, it always feels like home. Matter of fact, the only thing I don't like about London is the fact that it gets freezing, brick. And as y'all know, I just moved to Miami, so I don't do the cold stuff anymore, right? But anyways, man, if you're looking for African food, you'll find it out there. If you're looking for Jamaican food, you'll find it there. If you're looking for any type of food of African descent, you'll find it there, again, because it is such a diverse place. Every time I go there, it's love, it feels good. Whatever I need, whenever I need something or I need to look for something, and it's there. UK is a very connected location, right? And also too, they have a lot of laws that are just really against discrimination. So that's just not what it's about out there. So again, out of all the places in the world, the United Kingdom for sure is definitely friendly towards African Americans. And if you haven't been to the United Kingdom, I would highly encourage you to go, because it's much more than fish and chips. There's a lot more options. Coming in at number 4, we have France. And that might be a shocker to you. And guess what, y'all? France is much more than, say, just the Eiffel Tower sitting in Paris, right? Matter of fact, if you kind of get out of the area of where the Eiffel Tower is, there's actually a lot of Africans and people of African descent within France, right? Man, there's a lot of African restaurants and African businesses and a lot of African professionals and business owners and entrepreneurs. And again, you know, this is a place where I found so many options, you know, especially when I started leaving the popular path that people, you know, that they're very touristy. I was very surprised once I kind of opened up my mind and started to really explore different parts of France, right? And also too, within France, they also are pushing just a lot of just making sure that there's no like discrimination. You know, when it comes to discrimination, there's actually laws that are heavily pushing against discrimination. So, you know, listen, as an African American, I truly feel like, you know, if you have been to France before, they're very friendly towards African Americans. And if you have been in France before, I would encourage you to go beyond, you know, the area where the Eiffel Tower is, because you'll see there's so much more culture and just opportunities for our people to connect with one another out there. So make sure you open up your mind and really tap into France on another level. Coming in at number 3, we have Brazil. Man, listen, I love Brazil, and Brazil is literally the largest African nation outside of Africa. It has such a rich African heritage, just an amazing Afro-Brazilian just culture. And listen, man, I love Brazil, from the people, the food, the weather, the beaches, and not to mention they actually have one of the most legendary New Year's Eve experiences in the world. If you want to have an amazing New Year's Eve, listen, go to Copacabana Beach. The fireworks show there is absolutely epic. Let me tell you, you haven't experienced a New Year's Eve unless you have experienced New Year's Eve in Brazil. But all in all, as far as African Americans go, when you go to Brazil, you're going to feel the love, you're going to feel the culture. And listen, you go to certain parts, it's going to feel like home. For sure. It's going to feel like almost like Africa, right? And listen, it is one of my favorite places in the world. If you haven't been to Brazil, listen, go out there, Capriana drink, Bowl, and listen, just vibe out on Copacabana Beach. And all the other areas that's not as popular as Copacabana and Rio de Janeiro. But all in all, I love Brazil. And listen, yeah, when it comes to being African American, you can't go wrong going to Brazil, for sure. All right. Coming in at number 2, we got Colombia. Colombia is such a beautiful, diverse country, and especially in cities like, you know, Cartagena and Cali. They have a pretty strong Afro-Colombian community. And again, there's so many amazing things about Colombia that you just have to explore, from the people, you know, the food, the beaches, the different sights to see. It's definitely one of my favorite places, and the cost of living is relatively low, so you can ball on a budget. You can live like a king or queen. Man, there's just so much things to do. And again, if you haven't been to Colombia, I would highly encourage you to add it to higher up on the top of your list, because going out there, you will not be making the wrong decision for sure. And us as African Americans, again, it just feels like a place where, you know, it just feels like good vibes. It's a very friendly place towards our people. So make sure you get to Colombia. You won't regret it. And coming in at number 1, we have Costa Rica. Costa Rica has a growing population of Afro-Costa Ricans, mainly in the Limon province. And again, Costa Rica is just an overall amazing country. And they're heavily pushing the Afro-Costa Rican just culture in general, right? But guys, it's just, again, food, beaches, waterfalls. There's so many amazing things to do in Costa Rica. I've been there several times, and every time I go back, I have an even better time, and it's definitely one of my favorite places. But as an African American, being in Costa Rica, you know, it just feels like love, right? The people there are so friendly, they're so cool, and I've built some amazing relationships till this day with people that are in Costa Rica. And again, if you have been to Costa Rica, or if you're a person that's like, again, you want to travel somewhere and you want to feel safe as an African American, you want to go somewhere where you feel loved and it's good vibes, Costa Rica is definitely going to be that destination that's going to fulfill that for you for sure. And there you have it, guys. 7 countries that are very friendly towards African Americans. Are there more? Yes, but those are countries at the top of my list. And if you would love for me to do a part 2, let me know in the comments and I'll do another one like this. And hey, let me say something. If you're maybe not an African American and you're in a country where there isn't a lot of African Americans, what are some things that you can do to make sure that there's nothing but love and good vibes whenever you do see an African American? Well, number one, don't automatically assume that we're rappers or we're basketball players or that we want to talk about rap music all the time, because we don't, right? Or calling us jokingly Beyonce or Jay-Z, that's pretty offensive just because they're black and we're black, you know. And also too, especially, you know, towards African American women, don't touch African American women hair just because it looks like a different texture. That's just disrespectful. Or like touching our skin to see if it's like gonna come off, like that's just weird. You know, like, we're people, we got a lot of love to give, we got good energy, despite maybe what you saw on the internet or TV, like, we're people, like, just like you. And, you know, I don't like the fact that there's even a conversation of, like, countries that's the most friendly, you know, when it comes to African American. I would love to say that, man, like, every single country is friendly towards African Americans, but the reality is that's not 100% true. And we got to just talk about what it is. We got to put it out on the table. You know, like, for me, at the end of the day, I don't care what the color of your skin is. If you're a person that's of good vibes, you know, good energy, good intent, like, I got love for you. Like, I want nothing but the best for you. I want to see you win. I want to see you thrive on this planet. But again, this is for educational purposes, and again, there's a lot of racism out here. There's discrimination out here. It is still a thing, and despite a lot of the major, you know, negative things of the past, that's still in the past, there are still things relevant. So I hope this was informative for you. And again, despite whatever you color your skin, let's just all spread love. I think that's just energy that we should all be on. Let's spread love, y'all. It's the Brooklyn way. Y'all know I'm from Brooklyn. It's the Brooklyn way, right? But listen, y'all, if you love this episode, hit the like button. Also, too, let me know in the comments if there's countries that you've been to that's very friendly towards African Americans, or let me know if there are countries that you've been to that you know, you didn't have a good experience and you didn't feel like they were friendly towards African Americans. You know, let us know in the comments. And also, you know, keep me up to date with your journey, right? Let me know where you're traveling to next. I would love to know. And listen, I got more videos, more content that I'm going to get ready to drop, so make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay tuned. And listen, y'all, it's been amazing connecting with you guys another day. I'll see you guys on the next one. Let's go!
Have you ever pondered the intriguing question of the African roots of the Moche civilization? Let's travel to ancient Peru, where the Moche civilization thrived between 100 and 700 AD. These remarkable people, bound by culture, left impressive structures, art, and technology. Their history spans early, middle, and late periods, reaching across several valleys. Major sites include Huaca del Sol and Sipan. Their ceramics depict society in striking detail, and their artwork showcases the significance of fluidity and movement. But here's where it gets captivating. Historian Runoko Rashidi suggests African roots in the Moche civilization. So, what evidence do we have that suggests an African influence in the Moche civilization? Let's delve into the findings of Runoko Rashidi, a scholar who dedicated his life to exploring the global African presence. Rashidi was no ordinary researcher. He was a globetrotter, unearthing truths rooted deep in time. His voyages took him to numerous countries, his studies resonating. In 2001, Rashidi found himself in Peru, intrigued by the Africoid characteristics he identified in the Moche portrait vases in Peruvian museums. This discovery questioned the widely held belief that the first Africans in Peru were enslaved individuals. Contrarily, Rashidi suggested these early Africans were among the first blacks to traverse into the Western Hemisphere. Peru caught his interest because of its archaeological wealth. One significant era of its past, is the Moche period. The Moche, a warrior society, built their dominion along the Peruvian coast in the 1st century CE. Their capital, located in a desert, now sits beneath the Peruvian city of Trujillo, marked by grand temples. The Moche weren't only fighters, they were accomplished engineers, undertaking extensive irrigation projects and road systems, potentially inspiring the Incan highways. Their art, especially their portrait vases, was perhaps their most remarkable achievement. Observing these artifacts in the museums of Lima, Rashidi was struck by their strong, Africoid features. He felt these could have easily been created in the Congo. Rashidi's observations provide a compelling argument for the African roots of the Moche civilization, but what other evidence supports this theory? Art, as they say, is a mirror of society, and the Moche civilization is no exception. The Moche, thriving in northern Peru from 100 to 700 AD, left an indelible artistic imprint. Their lifelike portrait vases, prized for their intricate detail and compelling realism, stood out. Historian Runoko Rashidi discerned their Africoid features during a visit to Peru in June 2001. The striking similarity between the Moche vases and those from the Congo astounded him, reinforcing his theory of an ancient African influence in the Americas. Rashidi asserted the resemblance was not mere coincidence, but an indication of a shared artistic heritage, a manifestation of the African lineage within the Moche civilization. Yet their artistic mastery wasn't confined to pottery. They also excelled in the field of infrastructure, demonstrating their ingenuity through monumental architecture, sophisticated irrigation projects, and skilled engineering. Consider the La Cumbra Canal on the Chicama River, a marvel of Moche engineering still in operation today. The Ascope Aqueduct was another testament to their mastery over the arid terrain. These engineering feats, along with their intricate road networks, set the foundation for later civilizations like the Incas. Their legacy pervades modern Peru. Their capital, close to Trujillo City, boasts the Huaca del Sol and Huaca de la Luna, massive pyramids exemplifying the Moche's architectural excellence. Indeed, based on the artistic evidence alone, one could say that the Moche are among ancient America's best-kept secrets. Their artistry, engineering prowess, and enduring presence underscore this intriguing civilization, substantiating the theory of an ancient African influence in the Americas. Their narrative, encapsulated in their art and accomplishments, remains a vital thread in the rich tapestry of human history. So, the next time you hear about Peru, remember the Black Moche people and the remarkable civilization they built. If you're fascinated by these untold stories of ingenuity and cultural richness, smash that like button and subscribe for more. Lastly, for more information about the names and subjects mentioned in this video, get your copy of the Amazon best-selling book series, 19 White Men Who Admitted There Were Indigenous Black People in the Americas, and 13 Black Scholars Who Admitted There Were Black People in the Americas Before Columbus, by Chase McGee. Link in the description. Stay curious and keep exploring.
The Black nation is not restricted to Africa, the Caribbean, and American boundaries. Native Black people can also be found in Asia, Australia, and the Pacific. The Pacific Islanders. Pacific Islanders are the peoples of the Pacific Islands. As an ethnic/racial term, it is used to describe the original peoples, inhabitants, and diasporas of any of the three major subregions of Oceania that are Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. In fact, the term Melanesia comes from the word melanin, and it alludes to the dark complexion of these people. The countries that Black Pacific Islanders come from are mainly Melanesian, of which comprises the Solomon Islanders, in which you will meet the only black people with blonde hair, Vanuatu, and Fiji. The Negritos. Negrito is the collective term to refer to the Filipino indigenous peoples with a hunter-gatherer background, including the Agda, Ida, Adi, Otta, and Batak peoples. The Negrito peoples represent the most ancient civilization in the country, dating back more than 50,000 years ago. They are assumed to be the aboriginal inhabitants of the archipelago. Many of these Negrito groups still live by hunting and gathering, trading wild meat and forest products to the Filipino farmers around them in exchange for rice or corn. They also practice some marginal cultivation. the Australian Aborigines. Aborigines are Australia's indigenous people. Recent government statistics counted approximately 400,000 Aboriginal people, or about 2% of Australia's total population. A current theory holds that those early migrants themselves came out of Africa about 70,000 years ago, which would make Aboriginal Australians the oldest population of humans living outside Africa. Aborigines have dark brown skin and pronounced facial features. Most of them have straight dark hair, and even some, especially the Torres Strait Islanders, have blonde and brown hair. The cities. These are not really native to Asia, but rather migrants from Africa to Pakistan and India many years ago. The African ancestors of the cities are said to have been taken to India and Pakistan as slaves, domestic servants, concubines, palace guards and soldiers, or ventured servants, sailors, and free merchants, considering the commercial interaction between Asia, the Arabian Peninsula, and Eastern Africa. The Andamanese. The Andamanese are the various indigenous peoples of the Andaman Islands, part of India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands Union Territory in the southeastern part of the Bay of Bengal in Southeast Asia. All Andamanese traditionally lived a hunter-gatherer lifestyle and appear to have lived in substantial isolation for thousands of years. It is suggested that the Andamanese settled in the Andaman Islands around the latest glacial maximum, around 26,000 years ago. The Andamanese peoples include the Great Andamanese and Jarawas of the Great Andaman Archipelago, the Jangle of Rutland Island, the Onge of Little Andaman, and the Sentinelese of North Sentinel Island. The Sentinelese are famous for active and resisting outside influence and have been known to finish off anybody seeking to invade their islands. Most of the Andamanese look very African, though they have this unique facial look. The Tamil. The Tamil people are a Dravidian dark-skinned ethno-linguistic group who trace their ancestry mainly to India's southern state of Tamil Nadu, Union Territory of Puducherry, and to Sri Lanka. Tamils constitute 5.9% of the population in India and 15% in Sri Lanka. They may not consider themselves black, but their very dark complexions and facial features are a dead giveaway. Another group of Indian people with a dark complexion are the Telugu. There are some suggestions that these people may have a kinship with the Horn of Africa people, but it's scientifically unconfirmed. One thing about them is that they are considered to be most original and indigenous tribe in India. These are the indigenous people of Papua New Guinea and West Papua. Many of them look full African with kinky to woolly hair, broad noses, and dark to brown complexions. The indigenous Papuans are divided into hundreds of ethnic indigenous groups thought to have inhabited the island of Papua for perhaps over 40,000 years. They comprise of over 820 language groups, the highest of any country on Earth. In a sociological sense, most Papua New Guinea people could be considered black. Genetically, however, they are part of the broader Melanesian people. They carry the black identity, though, and to any Western foreigner, they would easily be labeled black. They are our brothers and sisters. Thank you for watching to the end, and see you in the next one.
All right, everybody, we back. Now, do you see how the narrative goes? Think about this for a minute. It is amazing to me, and I guess the reason is because I do so much research and I see how they go about reckoning where we are and what's going on and how everybody got where they was and where they are, and this is how they got there, and this is the way it came about as a result of what we said about who you are and where you came from, and I was right here. Okay, all right. Now let's say that what you are saying is a fact. Let's say that for a minute. But I have questions. Before the flood, the Noah's flood, before that, what complexion was the people on the earth then? Before the flood, all right? Now we got giants that was in the land before the flood, according to the story. But there's never any mention of what color was they. We tell you about they were giants, they had red hair, but no mention of what color they was. Now, what we do have is we always have images of these people whose complexion is anything but you. And if it is one of y'all somewhere, we need to cover that up, because that go back too far back. Let's look at the damage it caused as a result of this type of information that's allowed to come out, which is everything but you. Let's take a look at the damage that this caused and why it is so important for you to educate your own children instead of allowing them to be indoctrinated, masquerading as education. Okay? Now I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to look at the damage. You hold on a minute. We'll be right back.
Hey family, it's Monica. Today I have a special guest with us. We have Dr. Joy DeGruy. She is a nationally renowned researcher, an author. She's also a fellow social worker. So I want to introduce Dr. Joy. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast today. And I want to give you time to kind of introduce post-traumatic to those of us in the social work profession who might not be as familiar with your work.
Okay, so it's interesting because I taught in a school of social work for like 20 years, MSW students.
Yeah.
And even when I was doing the work then, there was very little done on historical trauma as it related to people of African descent. So my work, based on my book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, America's Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing. So basically all what I did in my research was looking at historical trauma in people of African descent. Now we've looked at trauma with other groups. We've looked at victims of natural disasters. We've looked at victims of war, Jewish Holocaust victims. And so I thought it was peculiar that the institution of enslavement, which lasted for hundreds of years, no one thought to look at that.
Right.
That particular,
right.
long enduring trauma.
Yeah.
And more importantly, what happens is, no one would discount someone Jewish looking at their history. No one would discount. But the moment we talk about African Americans, that was over a long time ago. I said, wait a minute. If I can experience a traumatic mental health injury as a result of hearing about something horrific happening to someone I love, what do you think several hundred years of trauma produced? So my work was really looking at that and what it looks like, how does it manifest, And some of it people already know in self-loathing. Oh, you know, she was pretty, even though she was dark. He was attractive. He was light-skinned, had good hair. You know, all of that language, all that narrative is one that speaks of us actually self-loathing. But my major question is, where did that come from? I've been to 7 countries in Africa. It's not an African thing, at least not yet. It's becoming that as they begin to look like us. But again, it's this whole idea of what does that injury look like as it relates to how I view myself, how I view other people that look like me, what do I believe about my self-efficacy as a person, and what do I believe about the systems of care that are currently happening as it relates to me, even looking at COVID, you can't avoid.
Absolutely. And I think that's so critical in this time, and as well as other times, that we've been in moments like this, where there's been this surgence of things that we've already know that are impacting the community, but then it brings this limelight. But I think your work kind of undergirds everything that we know about what we're seeing now. And I think that that's why it's so important for us to kind of root and ground the conversation in the work that you've already laid out, because it answers the question of why. Why are we seeing what we see? And now I think that the bigger answer is, how do we begin to, as a community, because I know you talk about in your book recreating the village, how can we begin to do that to help curb some of these health disparities that we're seeing within the community? So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, with this enduring legacy, for those of us who are working in the profession of social worker, myself being a therapist in private practice, what do you think the harm or consequence is of us continuing to work within the system without us having this historical understanding of our oppression?
I think that, you know, one of the oaths that one takes when you're working in community, you're working with others, particularly as it relates to mental health, is to do no harm. My feeling is that harm is being done. If you don't have enough information, you're going to harm people, right? So what we have to recognize is the people that are in front of us, whether that, you know, we are African American and the client is African American. Very often it's the opposite. The client is African American and the clinician is white. And basically doesn't even understand that there's a historical distrust of, you know, the medical profession in general. And here I am having to face someone whom I don't trust to help me. And that person may know so little about my experience that they actually cause me harm. So what do I mean by harm? So real true story, this is why it's so hard for me to do this in a short period of time. We were trying to establish a standalone mental health center in Portland, Oregon, a tall order in a city that really basically prides itself on being the whitest city in the United States. Okay, literally prides itself on that. So here we were trying to develop a standalone. There was precedent. So we had for the Latinx community, they had a standalone system. For the Native American community, there was a standalone. For the Jewish community, there was a standalone mental health center. But for black folks, someone would get the money coming down from the county, the city, the state, the feds, and go, oh, we'll serve black people. We'll put a pilot program in the middle of the black community because we want the money to serve you. Then we'll find some token black people, nobody of authority, no one with that is a manager or, a director. It's going to be, frontline staff. But that would be your point to which you're saying, oh, we have African Americans present. So now let's move it forward. True story. They did that in the black community because they wanted to get the money to serve the black community. And they figured, what do I need to know? I'll just plop a center down there in the middle. Right. And what happens is a gentleman shows up. He's maybe 6'5", 270, bipolar. Has been off his medicine for a few weeks because he lost his job and he heard that the clinic could help him with his medicine, right? So he's coming in there for help. Right. One of the things that circulated a week before he showed up was a memo that the manager put out, a white female manager, that we will no longer serve angry or agitated black men. Wow. So this is a program to serve black people. So this black man shows up. Of course, he not a single synapse is firing right for him. But when he walks in the room, who is there sitting before him but Cindy Lou Who from Arkansas with her MSW. And she's now at this point, when she sees him come in the room, it's turning the color of ripened fruit, because she's now remembering all the things Daddy told her about men that look like him. So now he shows up 6'5", 270, bipolar, off his medicine for a couple of weeks. And he, even though he can't pull any of his thinking really fully together, he knows, I better not scare that white girl. Somewhere coming through that was, don't scare the white girl. So he gets in the chair, he pushes the chair back, he turns, diverts his gaze, he tries to be as small as he can, because he can look at her and see that she's already frightened, and he's doing all that to take care of himself. So the first thing he has to do is take care of her. And I would assert that that's harm to him. Now her response is, oh, but I'm not a racist. My response is, I don't care. 300 years of history entered the room, and you weren't able to navigate that space because you didn't think there was anything more you needed to do but get your MSW, which likely didn't cover people like him, except to not deal with them. So what I'm saying is it caused him, and I argue to the state, at the state level, it took us 7 years to get a standalone center. 7 years. Because again, what do we need to know to walk into a black community? My MSW students, inevitably, whenever I would ask them, okay, I just want you to sharpen your skills. Tell me what you're going to do. There's a huge influx of Romanians. What are you going to do? Hands go up. Oh, well, we want to consider religion and language, and we want to consider gender issues, and all of a sudden all this comes up. And I name different groups, and then I say African-American community, and there's silence.
Oh, wow.
And I say, so am I to assume that you don't believe that there's anything you need to learn to go into my community?
Right.
Nothing. And then they get mad. Well, you're saying, I said, I'm not saying anything. You're saying everything right now. When you can't put anything on the board because you don't think there's anything more you need to know.
Right.
And see, again, that sets up this dynamic. And even students, MSW students that get sent out into the community to do their practice, and they're in these field, their field placements, and they don't have a clue. They do harm. They do harm.
Yeah.
And say and do and behave in a way, and then their response is, well, I'm feeling uncomfortable. Okay.
Yeah.
But again, it's not totally on them, because we have institutions that don't feel it's necessary to educate folks about anything.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important, especially when we're in this era of trauma-informed care, and there's been all this language around ACEs and adverse childhood experiences, but that does not contextualize what we've experienced as a culture. So there seems to be models there, but they don't encompass the depth or the breadth of what we experience. And then there's not that culturally competent base that was really embedded into our profession to be culturally competent, but the models just don't seem to be there. And I'm going to ask you about that later in terms of models. So the next question that I wanted to know is, we know kind of what's going on the political landscape, the social landscape in terms of COVID, and the deaths that are still happening under COVID. People in our community still dying. And I watched a lot of your lives where you were talking about how we were using this term dying disproportionately, but that in and of itself speaks to post-traumatic slave syndrome. And I know that you're really big about putting out there that you don't want this to be a pathology of black people, but you just want this to be an understanding of kind of to contextualize what we've experienced without putting a mental health label on the community.
Right. It's not something that should be in the DSM. Right. So because in DSM, now what you've done is you've absolutely pathologized black people, and you've also said that there's someone that is going to come in that can fix you.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to find out what this is, because what post-traumatic implies is not just that we have had historical injury and contemporary injury. We keep being injured, kind of hard to heal.
Yeah.
You keep breaking my leg, and then you complain that I limp, right? So you have this kind of ongoing process where you're being assaulted, but nobody's kind of understanding that you've been injured.
Yeah.
And so it's not about, again, it's not something you could fix in a clinical setting, because it requires social justice.
Yeah.
You got to stop hitting me, right? You got to stop doing these other structural and institutional assaults.
Right.
Not just someone sitting in a room talking to me softly or medications that can fix this. What has to fix this is social justice.
Okay. Totally understand and get that. So within that system, kind of what you just explained, when you have to give so much validity to what we've experienced, how do you help navigate people within the community and outside of the community who say that we're simply making excuses, that the reason why we don't succeed is because maybe we're not working hard enough, or we need to strive more or work harder? What would be your response to that narrative?
My response would be that we worked free for over 300 years.
Right.
So anybody talk about working harder, I don't know how much harder you could work than that.
Yeah.
And then to have worked for 300 years for free and to end up inheriting debt.
Yeah.
Right? Because you didn't even own yourself, let alone anything that you worked for.
Right.
There's a lot of layers. Like people say, well, I didn't own slaves, and my family, pulled themselves up from the bootstraps. I said, yeah, but we provided those bootstraps.
Right.
We provided them
bootstraps
for free. We didn't have any boots. Like my father would always say, if a white man has a cold, then a black man has pneumonia. So when you start looking at the ACEs study, adverse childhood experiences, you're going to go, okay, if you're talking about harm, that was done on about 16,000 majority white people.
Absolutely.
That's who they looked at.
Right.
So again, if you're looking at black folks, like we were just recently, I was doing some work with some folks in New York, and they were talking about the digital divide, right? And they were saying one of the school districts said, well, we're going to get computers out to everybody, right, to kids. But somehow the red line didn't include the folks who were most at risk, the folks who, for example, didn't have internet.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone a computer. So you give them a computer, there's no internet. There's no fiber optics for it.
Right.
Because it's not even piped for it, because there's no intention of serving these people.
Right.
And then maybe it's a grandmother that's raising the grandchildren and may not even understand how to navigate the technology. So we start talking about helping, you see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Without the proper lens, you can't help.
Right.
You don't even know how to help. So,
Right.
like again, that's just one simple thing. We're talking about, oh, great, let's just get everybody a computer.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to leave it, well, they didn't access it. Well, really, did they even have, were they able to pay the electric bill that month? I mean,
Right.
there's so many things that layers of oppression that are going on at the same time. And
Yeah.
people are navigating that. People are figuring out how to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But don't beat me up. And most certainly do not pathologize me, because we're far from weak, fragile victims. We've done this much with nobody concentrating on the nature of our injury.
Right.
You see? So we've come this far with no help.
Absolutely.
And I'm saying as black clinicians, as black social workers, as black psychologists, psychiatrists, what have you, we have a unique lens into the folks that we're working with.
Yeah.
And not to say that everybody that looks like us behaves like us, right? So I've run into teachers, administrators, clinicians that are so disconnected from themselves that the only thing they do when they see people of color is punish them.
Mm.
They punish them.
Yeah.
I had students that would or folks that figure. I had a student once that was unhappy with her. The clients she was working with. And I said, why is that? She goes, because, I don't know, everybody just seems to be doing so well. I'm going, okay. So, again, in her mind, because her own experience had been consistent in perpetual drama, if there's no continuing perpetual drama, it throws her off, right? Mm-hmm. So we had to deal with her doing her own personal work before she could actually do work with other people, because she had herself become accustomed to crisis. She lived in crisis for her own life. Does that make sense? And so I'm not. And when she would tell me that she was unhappy, I noticed that it would always happen when there was no drama going on with her client.
Hmm.
And the only time she felt like she was really doing something is if there was a crisis. But she said it's born out of her own experience. And so, again, how important is it to know your own narrative, have your own narrative?
Yes.
Right.
And that's
Right.
one of the things that I noticed that you mentioned in the book, too, about kind of language or telling our own story. and how important that is for us to be able to reclaim our narrative, to be able to talk about our experiences, and then how that's rooted in kind of.
All right. Part 1. Let's go. Part 2.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome is an explanatory theory that really looks at multi-generational trauma. One of the things that's difficult for people is their first response is, oh my God, that happened so long ago. We're talking about people being captured, shipped, sold, beaten, raped, experimented on, and then you have to ask the question, did the trauma continue? Yes. So 300 years of trauma, no help, freed. No help, more trauma. If it's a sustained trauma, then the impact of that is also sustained. When we look at multi-generational trauma, we're looking at people who are maybe victims of natural disasters and their families and their children and generations of folks who have experienced war. And we know that there are residual mental, emotional, traumatic impacts. And what I did was I started to look at the African American experience, starting with slavery, as a real clear, long enduring trauma. I started to see that there were clear connections between that survival behavior and contemporary living in African American experience. I started to see common behaviors that I took for granted as, well, cultural. There's adaptive behaviors, survival behaviors. Well, what are they? Let's just say 2019, you have a black mother and a white mother. The sons go to school together. They find themselves at a meeting. The black mother leans over to the white mother and says, I just wanted to mention to you that I noticed that your son is really doing quite well. And the white mother's response is, oh, thank you. She begins to go on and on about he won the science fair, his uncle's an astronaut. She's just oozing. She realizes the black mother's son is actually excelling her son. And she says, well, wait a minute. Your son's the one that's really coming along. And the black mother responds, oh my God, he's a handful, but oh, he just works my nerves. Now, when I'm working with African American people, it doesn't matter what the audience is. It doesn't matter what class. If I were to ask, is she very proud while she's saying those denigrating things? And everybody laughs and goes, of course, there's a secret. Because everybody black knows that even though the black mother is going, oh my God, she's really proud. So now let's roll that scene back 300 years. And let's say this black mother is working in the fields, and a white slave owner comes through and says, wow, that boy is really coming along. What is she going to say? No, he's not. He's stupid. He's shiftless. He can't work because I don't want you to sell him. So I denigrate them to protect them. That is called appropriate adaptation when living in a hostile environment. The little white boy, say Timmy, he feels really comfortable and happy about what his mom just said about him. And Trey looks at his mom and wonders, why can't you be proud of me? Because he doesn't understand the secret yet.
White comfort trumps black liberation. White comfort trumps black freedom. White comfort trumps black joy. White comfort trumps. If that is not addressed, it will slide in and be behind the scenes and you won't even know it's there.
America has seen black trauma play out for years.
If you want to survive, do and say as little as possible.
Through movies about slavery and racial terror in all its forms. And even more viscerally in real life, with every case of police harassment and violence against black people. After George Floyd's murder at the hands of police, the country finally started waking up to systemic racism and the silent trauma it inflicts. There's growing research into racism's real impact on the body, especially how stress can impact health and how your DNA works. Resmaa Menakem, a therapist and trauma specialist, has been drawing on this research for years. In the months following Floyd's death, his 2017 book about racialized trauma made it to the New York Times bestseller list. We checked in with him in May.
So you're a therapist and racial trauma expert. If you could define what racial trauma is.
Yeah. So for me, racial trauma is number one, the idea that the white body is the supreme standard of humanness. Me and you were born into a structure by which the white body deems itself the human standard. right? And we were considered to be the deviants from that human standard. And so the trauma element is that it is unceasing, it is pervasive, it is persistent, right? And it is woven in and around and through every institution, along with something not reparative. So it's not just that something bad happened to you, it's that something bad happened to you and there was no reprieve.
You talk about in your book that white supremacy, literally, not just figuratively, lives in our blood, our DNA expression, our nervous system.
Absolutely.
Can you break down what that actually means?
Yeah. I come from a people that were brutalized, raped, could not run, could not flee, terrorized, their towns burned up, girls blown up in the church, right? All of that stuff for 250 years was happening to me or to my people. When somebody is brutalized, there are particular things that happen to the nervous system. One of them is that there is a release of adrenaline. There's a release of cortisol. There's a release of norepinephrine. And those things are designed to get you out of danger or help you fight or flee out of danger. And those things are only supposed to be in your nervous system for short bursts of time. But what if the thing that is dangerous doesn't leave for 250 years? What happens to all of that adrenaline? What happens to all of that cortisol? What does it do to the DNA expression? One of the things about DNA expression is it's designed to turn things on and off on the DNA. There is a certain kind of thing that makes that DNA say, be hypervigilant. Well, look for things. This place is dangerous. Don't look white people in the eyes. But it's unspoken. We have it in our bodies as notions. So imagine that going down just from one line all the way down, and by the time it gets to me and you, we have this sense that something is off. We have this vibratory sense, and we don't have a language for it. Time decontextualizes trauma, right? So trauma in a person looks like personality, can look like personality over time. Trauma in a family can look like family traits over time. Trauma in a people can look like culture over time.
What are some examples
Absolutely.
Of culture?
So my grandmother used to have a braided switch, right? That was braided and put behind her and my grandfather's picture. And every time you look up, you see that switch, right? If we got out of line, right, my grandmother would whoop us, right? Get your butt back in line, whoop us. Well, think about 250 years of whippings, of rearing, of brutality on the black body. I believe that whoopings is a traumatic retention from whippings. These are the things that we have to examine, right? And the same thing happens for white folks, right? White folks have never examined the 1,000 years of brutality that they experienced at the hands of other white folks through the Middle Ages, through 1,000 years of that Euro violence. And then that body came here, right? Without any reprieve, without anything. And so by the time elite white bodies offered poor white bodies whiteness, by the time they were offered the idea of not being servants, not being, and they still were, but there was another level that was put in there, and that level was above Africans. By the time they were offered it, they took it because they understood what the brutality was like at the hands of elite white bodies. They don't have a collective way of getting at that violence.
You talk about how that there's a perception that whiteness is working out for white people, but it isn't. Can you explain that?
Yeah. The reason why I say it's not working out for white people is that for white people to participate in the structure like this means that they must give up part of their humanity to participate. They get advantages.
All right, we're back now. Okay. I hope y'all got something out of this right here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hear from Bolson Bolton, he said, don't let them change their mind. I need to know what you're talking about, what this is about. Now, we just got to listening to Joy. Joy done laid it out for you. Told you the effects of what has happened to you and how it is affecting you. Okay? Now, I'm going to go to Bolton. Hold on a minute.
Of course, they would like to redirect us to talk about problems in our own societies. Our societies are the only ones that are ever supposed to be criticized. You know, you're not supposed to talk about them. You're not supposed to talk about the West. You're not supposed to focus on Western wrongdoing. Acceptable discussion only includes praising them and denigrating and berating us. That's what's allowed. So, of course, they want to divert us from talking about colonization and occupation and genocide to instead talking about, you know, goat life or what have you. You know, the kefala system, migrant workers in the GCC or whatever. Always attack your own people, attack your own countries, attack your own governments. That's always welcome. And if we do talk about Western crimes, according to their logic, that in order to be fair, we should also talk about wrongdoing in the Muslim world. Otherwise, we're being biased. Like, it makes sense to them. If we're going to talk about how Jeffrey Dahmer was a serial killer who used to chop up his victims and eat them, then for the sake of fairness, we should also talk about the fact that maybe some of his victims used to eat junk food. This makes sense to them. I mean, you do realize that if we do talk about problems in the Muslim world as part of a so-called balanced conversation when we talk about Western crimes, this is only going to magnify how unbalanced the comparison actually is, how disproportionately atrocious the West is as compared to anything that you could criticize about the West's victims. I mean, this is the epitome of false equivalence. It's like saying that there are casualties on both sides of the Gaza conflict or any such dishonest obfuscation. And I think if it's not deliberate, malicious deflection, then it is symptomatic of the West's disingenuous approach to so-called free speech. The way they use free speech as a rationale for juxtaposing rational thought with irrational thought, intelligence with idiocy, because everyone should have a voice. And they use a very calculated formula, actually, in popular media, in like mainstream news and so on, that is literally designed to disorient you. You know, there'll be some story of a horrific tragedy immediately followed by a celebrity gossip story, which will then be followed by a story about famine, which will then be followed by a story about, you know, fluffy puppies on a water slide. Subconsciously, this undermines your intellectual ability to even discern the relative importance or gravity of pieces of information, which is why your society minimizes monstrosities and maximizes trivialities all the time. So you'll easily be distracted, you'll be easily confused, you'll be easily sidelined, easily redirected and misdirected and disconnected from reality. You've lost any sense of proportion. Your sense of judgment floats in zero gravity, where a mountain weighs the same as a grain of sand. And what you don't understand, if you're doing this out of innocent ignorance and not with malicious intention of deliberately obfuscating your society's evil, if you're doing it innocently, what you don't understand is that you are helping the most savage, violent, psychopathic power structure in the world to evade accountability. When you direct your attention to the comparatively minor, comparatively mundane, and usually anomalistic examples of wrongdoing in the Muslim world or in the Arab world or what have you, and you try to suggest that these examples deserve anything like the same attention and the same concern as the mass murder of tens of thousands of innocent men, women, and children and babies in Gaza being committed by the United States by means of Israel, well, then you're complicit, in my opinion. You're acting knowingly or unknowingly as an agent for the U.S. and the Zionists. And wallahi, you're helping them to minimize the gravity of their crimes and trivializing the barbarity of their actions. And you're participating, again, knowingly or unknowingly, in an absolutely contemptible campaign to deceive, corrupt, and degrade people's moral judgment. I mean, not only are whatever instances of wrongdoing that you might point to in the Muslim world minuscule by comparison, and generally the types of things that Westerners talk about or point out in the Muslim world. There are things that are done by individuals, you know, or non-state actors, militant groups or what have you, which have anyway been created, trained and funded and planted by the West themselves, or else they're talking about cultural practices that don't reflect Islamic law and don't even reflect the laws of the countries where those examples might take place. The instances of wrongdoing in the Muslim community are no more representative of us than your instances of good doing are representative of you. Both are anomalies. Because you do wrong on a policy level, on an official level. You commit crimes on the state level. And your whole society, your whole culture, your whole popular entertainment and your media all glorify your wrongdoing. Both quantitatively and qualitatively, there's no comparison. I mean, you may find an oppressive Muslim here and there, an extremist here and there, but you're oppressive on a global scale, and your society is defined by its extremism. You're extreme in your violence. You're extreme in your celebration of your violence. You're extreme in your perversion, extreme in your addiction, extreme in your predation, extreme in your greed, extreme in your racism. You're extreme in your arrogance and your Western supremacism and white supremacism. You're extreme in your hypocrisy. And like I said, you do this on the state level, on the level of society-wide behavior and beliefs. Your government, your national militaries, your official intelligence agencies, your biggest companies and corporations are all participating in this. Your wrongs are not aberrations. They're not exceptions. They are continuous, consistent, characteristic, and catastrophic. And it is so definitive of who you are as a so-called civilization that it's predictable. So no, I'm not going to help you minimize or distract or evade or deflect from your monstrous crimes by talking about our own mundane issues. Our issues anyway are none of your business. But your issues are our business because you are the biggest issue that we have. And you made it that way. You don't get to complain about it when people around the world criticize America as if it's none of their business. When you have imposed America on the whole world, you made it this way. We can't talk about our countries without talking about you. Because you're interfering and intervening and intruding in our countries. We're not doing that to you. So when we talk about you, we're talking about our own situation. Because you are disproportionately involved in our own situation, in everyone's situation actually. Like I said, it's completely misleading and false to equate in severity any problems within the Muslim societies to the problems that you cause in the world and in Muslim societies. We all just watched the videos of Palestinian refugees being bombed in their tents. You blow up schools, you blow up hospitals, you blow up clinics, you blow up people's homes, and then blow up the tents that they're sheltering in because you blew up their homes. You rape detainees with broomsticks and you celebrate it, and you demand the right to be able to torture and rape people. And you applaud the torturers and the rapists on morning television shows. You declare your intention to take over other people's lands, other countries, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. You, your Israeli contingent, the Jewish brigade of Western imperialism, because that's what they are, they're you and you're them. Everything that the Israelis are doing, everything that the Zionists are doing, that's you. You're the ones doing that. You're doing all of that. Attacking like 6 different countries at the same time in full-blown psychotic criminal aggression. Attacking the United Nations staff, United Nations troops, literally attacking peacekeeping troops. And no matter how flagrant a crime against humanity that you commit, no matter what blatant, unspeakable war crime that Israel commits on camera, in broad daylight, in front of the whole world, your only response is to give them more weapons and more money. Please explain to me how you're not monstrous. Netanyahu should be in jail. Gallant should be in jail. Smotrich should be in jail. Ben-Gvir should be in jail. Biden should be in jail. Harris should be in jail. Every minute that these war criminals are on the loose is the collective West and America declaring to the world that they're an outlaw society and they do not believe even slightly in the rule of law. And you're a menace to the planet. And then you're going to say, well, what about women in Iran? Right? Women in Iran being arrested if they remove the headscarf. Are you out of your mind? Did you hear what I just said? Bombing men, women, children, and babies in tents versus a different criteria for what constitutes public indecency. Are you seriously equating these things? Is that how morally confused you are? Or is it just that, yes, the most heinous crime that anyone can ever possibly commit in your eyes is just being different from you? Like thinking legally a woman should cover her head in public, not just her breasts. Like in the U.S., a woman will also get arrested for being uncovered, but it only applies to her breasts. So we're literally actually only at odds with regards to the area of coverage that's required, not the issue of coverage itself. And that difference is enough for you to think that it is of equal importance and severity as war crimes, bombing, torture, rape, and mass murder. So yeah, let's talk about the wrongs in the Muslim world, right? Wallahi, this is demented. People need permission from their employers to change jobs in the Gulf if they have not completed their current work contract. Oh, that's a catastrophic injustice, and we must speak out against it. Meanwhile, Americans in IDF uniforms are gang-raping detainees and blowing up residential city blocks in Lebanon versus the GCC makes foreign workers do paperwork. Are you serious? Oh, women get catcalled in Egypt versus a woman is assaulted every 3 seconds in America, and America is the sex trafficking center of the world. Do you see how insidious it is to try to compare these things? To act like there's some equity between them? No, morality requires discernment and prioritization. You have to be able to actually gauge degrees of severity. Otherwise, you're just a moral relativist. Practically speaking, you're a relativist. Vaporizing families in refugee camps is bad. Also, littering is bad. People who do either one of these things are bad people and deserve equal condemnation. This is a mockery of morality. While pretending that you want to address all injustices, you're only mocking justice itself if you treat all injustice equally. Like if your soup is cold when the waiter brings it to you, is that an injustice? So is that the same then as if you shoot the waiter in the face? No. Standing up for justice includes standing up for distinguishing bad from worse. All injustices are not equal. All crimes are not equal. And there is nothing that anyone is doing anywhere that even approaches the crimes and the injustice of the West, neither in scale nor in severity. Prioritizing opposition to the West's catastrophic injustices does not mean ignoring anything and everything that's less than that. It's simply a rational recognition that they are less than that. But furthermore, I would say that, and I've said this before, solidarity and unity are obligatory. We're concerned with economic sovereignty, political independence, and psychological decolonization for the Muslims and for the global South more broadly. All the peoples of the world who have suffered colonization, exploitation, subjugation, and domination by the West. And this is a confrontation. So we need to close ranks, circle the wagons, and stand shoulder to shoulder as a single solitary structure in this confrontation, and not allow ourselves to be turned against each other, not allow ourselves to denigrate each other, tear each other down, and do the work of our enemies by turning our attention away from them and turning it against ourselves. Between ourselves, we have to be compassionate, we have to be pardoning, and we have to be encouraging and supportive. Any criticism must be constructive criticism with genuinely brotherly intent, with the intention to solidify and strengthen our ranks, reinforcing, optimistic, with goodwill. Yes, hypocrites pose a problem, but the hypocrites expose themselves the moment they do the opposite of what I just talked about. The surest sign of hypocrisy is when someone is literally doing the enemy's job by trying to tear down the Muslims, trying to sow division and animosity between the believers, and try to undermine our solidarity. The moment they try to turn our attention away from the ones that we're confronting and being confronted by, the ones who are bombing us and killing us and torturing us and subjugating our nations, the moment they want to turn our attention away from them, well, you know whose side they're on. And what you need to do is ignore them. Turn away from them. Put them on mute and move on. There's no need for debates. There's no need for arguments or engagement of any kind. You shut them out to shut them down. Because look, wallahi, I honestly believe that we're experiencing something like a Badr moment for our ummah. You know how the chiefs of the enemies of Islam, the elite of the kuffar, all assembled at Badr, and Rasulullah ﷺ said, this is Quraysh. They have come in their arrogance and in their pride to protect their caravan. Well, that's America, and Israel is the caravan that they're protecting. They're pouring in their billions into this. They're staking their credibility on this. They're pinning their hopes on this. They know that their future as a global power depends on this sinking aircraft carrier known as Israel, and they're going for broke. And they're taking the whole collective West with them. They're trying to make all of their so-called allies co-sign on their atrocities, on their crimes, on their savagery, on their undermining and sabotaging and defiance of international law, of the United Nations, of every norm and standard of international relations. They're trying to get everyone to go along with that. Everything that they're doing to try to salvage their power, trying to salvage their influence, salvage their image, is doing nothing but destroy it. We're watching America and the collective West having a full-blown meltdown in the Middle East, and they're so far gone that they can't even see what they're doing. You know, Blinken came back from Riyadh last week and called Mohammed bin Salman a spoiled child. Meanwhile, your boy, Netanyahu, is saying Gaza is mine, Lebanon is mine, Syria is mine, Iraq is mine, Jordan is mine, Saudi Arabia and Egypt are mine. It's all mine. Even saying we should rape the Irish UN peacekeepers. Maybe we should even invade Ireland. No one can tell us what to do. International law isn't the boss of me, but bin Salman is the spoiled child. Everyone can see you. Everyone can hear you. You're putting your psychopathic God complex on display right in the open in front of everybody. It's like somebody told you that the toilet is a safety deposit box and you lock it by flushing. You're flushing your whole so-called civilization, all your prestige, all your power, right down the toilet, and you think that you're protecting it. This is what we're seeing. They think that Israel is their new Alamo. It's Little Bighorn, Custer's last stand. See, you have to understand American thinking, their myths, and so on. They know on some level that they're going to lose, but they think that there's something heroic or something noble in taking suicidal stands for the sake of American colonial supremacy. All the countries of the global south, all of BRICS, everyone is on the side of the Palestinians, on the side of international law, on the side of humanity. All of the countries that represent the future of the global economy. This is not going to go well. This is not going to turn out well for America. There's no realistic question about that. Because you see, there's a day after. There's a week later. There's time moving forward. The dust settles. The toll is tabulated. And everything that you're doing now will be judged. You're caught up in the momentum of your own death spiral. Your Zionist colonial project is drowning and flailing in the water, and they're going to pull you down with them. Because they're not actually drowning. They're tangled up in the chain of an anchor that's pulling them into the depths of oblivion. And that anchor is their racist, supremacist, colonizer philosophy. And America and Israel think that they can swim up faster than that anchor can pull them down, but they can't. You have to detach yourselves from that philosophy if you want to stay afloat, but they can't do that either. So all the violence, all the carnage, all the horrors that we're seeing, we have to try to understand that in context, not just in the context of this moment, and not even just in the context of history, but in the context of the future. Try to look at what's going on today as if you're looking back on it. All of the violence is just like the wild splashing of a drowning man, and eventually that splashing and that flailing will stop, and we all know what it means when it stops. It means you're down for the count. You're drowning in the blood of your victims, and all of that blood that you're spilling is going to fill your lungs and you won't be able to breathe. They're in a terrible situation of their own making. So sure, I understand why they would like to try to divert attention away from the calamity that they're facing, which is the crumbling edifice of their whole so-called civilization. All of their crimes and their atrocities are on full display. They've always tried to avoid scrutiny, but there's no reason why you and I should help them with that, why you and I should try to help them avoid scrutiny. There's no equivalent to Western savagery, Western tyranny, Western oppression. There's no equivalent today, and there's no equivalent in history. And anyone who tries to suggest that there is, or who tries to redirect our attention away from them, is doing nothing but draw attention to their own dishonesty and their own hypocrisies.
All right. There you have it. All right, for the last time, the Black Vegan Fest will be happening tomorrow, which is Saturn's Day, at 11 a.m. It will last until 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for those of you who are out of town that plan to visit down here one more time, the location is 3607 Reebok Scenic Drive. That's 3607 Reebok Scenic Drive. Jacksonville, Florida. You be in Duval County. The zip code is 32208. This is where it will be happening. Y'all hold on a minute. We're going to run it one more time.
Okay, everybody. October the 26th, right here in Duval County, Jacksonville, Florida, the Black Vegan Fest will take place. Live bands, live entertainment, professional chefs will teach you how to cook healthy. If you are a vendor, go to www.urbangeoponics.org and sign up. Bring your fishing gear with you. If you're a fisherman, we got the river right in the back of the property. We'll teach you how to grow your own food, teach your children how to do the same thing. You'll learn how to prepare meals healthy. There'll be fun and games for the whole family. October the 26th, the Black Vegan Fest, right here in Jacksonville, Florida. Don't miss it. Make sure you got some cash with you, because vendors will be on hand and they'll be selling their wares. October the 26th, the Black Vegan Fest, right here, Jacksonville, Florida. Don't miss it. Be here.
All right. Now, we're going down to the close of the broadcast. And like I told you at the start, I don't like running the same thing twice. I don't like that. I like brand new, fresh information, but this particular information is so critical and so vital, I don't feel like I have another choice but to run it one more time. And I'm going to close out with this one right here. One more time. We're going to do it one more time. Pay attention. One more time.
Welcome, the anointed ones. Jealousy is a disease, and those infected will try to poison anyone who radiates strength. Imagine walking into a room minding your own business, and the air shifts. The whispers, the sneers, the judgment. It's palpable. You've done nothing wrong, but you feel the weight of eyes on you, heavy with resentment. The truth? They don't hate you. They envy what they can never possess. Studies show that envy is often directed at those who embody traits others secretly wish they had. And for those of us labeled the chosen ones, the attacks don't just come out of nowhere. They come from those threatened by your light, by the power you hold, by the sheer audacity of your growth. They did you dirty, but here's what they didn't expect: your comeback. Number 1, your strength illuminates their weakness. When people attack your character, it's often not about anything you've done, but about what you represent. Your strength highlights their weaknesses. Every success you achieve, every time you stand tall, it reminds them of where they fall short. It's not the fact that you've succeeded. It's that your success magnifies what they've failed to accomplish. This can be unsettling for people who are already insecure or dissatisfied with their own lives. Deep down, they see in you the qualities they wish they had: resilience, courage, authenticity. But rather than striving to cultivate these traits in themselves, they choose the easier path, tearing you down. It's not that they truly despise you. They despise what you reflect back at them. Your determination and progress are a direct contrast to their stagnation, and that makes them uncomfortable. Attacking you becomes a way for them to cope with their own feelings of inadequacy. It's easier for them to believe that there's something wrong with you than to confront what's missing in themselves. They'll question your motives, your integrity, and your character, all to make themselves feel better. It's a distraction, a smokescreen for their own shortcomings. Your strength is unsettling to those who feel powerless in their own lives, and by attacking you, they think they can diminish your light. What they don't realize is that by focusing on you, they're actually admitting something about themselves. They can't ignore you. You've become a reminder that they could be more, and that kind of reflection is hard to face. In attacking you, they're revealing just how much your strength affects them. You're a mirror they can't avoid, and that's why they lash out. Number 2, they try to soil what they can't achieve. When someone can't achieve what you've accomplished, they often resort to tearing it down. It's a twisted form of self-preservation. If they can't rise to your level, they'll try to drag you down to theirs. You've probably noticed this pattern with people who seem to criticize everything you do, regardless of how well you're doing. The truth is, it's not about your mistakes or flaws. It's about them feeling inadequate in comparison to you. Rather than striving for more, they focus their energy on discrediting your achievements. This isn't always obvious, though. It can come in subtle forms: backhanded compliments, passive-aggressive remarks, or undermining your efforts in sneaky ways. They might even rally others to their cause, trying to paint you as someone undeserving of your success. The logic is simple. If they can convince others you're not worthy, it helps them justify why they haven't achieved what you have. It's a defense mechanism, a way to protect their ego from the reality that they haven't done the work to get where you are. What they fail to understand is that diminishing you doesn't elevate them. No matter how much mud they sling, it doesn't change the fact that you've earned what you have. Their jealousy blinds them to the simple truth: success isn't limited. Just because you've reached a certain level doesn't mean they can't too. But envy doesn't see possibility. It only sees what it lacks. Ultimately, their attempts to destroy what they can't achieve reflect their own inner struggle. It's easier for them to criticize than to put in the effort. And by choosing the path of tearing you down, they only trap themselves in their own limitations. You, however, continue to rise. Number 3, their betrayal is a confession. Betrayal isn't just about broken trust. It's a reflection of the betrayer's inner turmoil. When people betray you, they aren't just turning their back on you. They're revealing how threatened they are by your authenticity. It's a confession, loud and clear. They see something in you, something real, something strong that makes them uncomfortable because it exposes the parts of themselves they've been hiding or ignoring. Think about it. Betrayal doesn't happen in a vacuum. It often comes from those who are closest to you, those who've seen your journey up close. They've watched your struggles, your growth, and your strength. For some, witnessing that can stir up deep feelings of inadequacy or resentment. They don't betray you out of nowhere. It's usually building up over time. Your success or resilience starts to make them feel smaller in comparison, and instead of facing their own insecurities, they choose to lash out. It's easier for them to blame you, to frame you as the problem, than to look at the parts of themselves they're unhappy with. Betrayal often has nothing to do with what you've done wrong. It's about what you represent. Your ability to be real, to stand tall, to live in your truth. It challenges the version of themselves they're presenting to the world. Maybe they've built their life on half-truths or facades, and being around someone like you makes those cracks impossible to ignore. So they act out, hoping that by betraying you, they can distance themselves from that uncomfortable mirror you hold up. But in doing so, they aren't betraying your trust as much as they're betraying their own character. They show you who they really are, while you continue standing in your truth, unshaken. Number 4, they fear your evolution. People don't attack you because of who you are right now. They attack you because of who you're becoming. That's what really scares them. It's your growth, your potential, the things you're on the verge of accomplishing. They can sense that you're evolving into something bigger, something they can't control or predict. And that's where the fear comes from. It's not your present self that threatens them. It's the version of you that's still unfolding, the one they can't keep up with. Your progress becomes a reminder to them of everything they haven't done, of all the ways they've stayed stuck. Every step forward you take feels like you're leaving them behind, and instead of growing with you, they'd rather hold you back. So they attack. They try to stop you before you fully step into your power, hoping to stunt your evolution. The irony is, their attempts to pull you down often push you even further ahead. It's not just your success that worries them. It's the fact that they can't predict or contain you anymore. You're moving into spaces they don't understand or control. People like stability, predictability. It makes them feel safe. When you start to break out of the mold, it unsettles them. They don't know how to react, so they lash out, hoping that their attacks will make you second-guess yourself, hoping that their negativity will slow you down. But their fear of your growth isn't something you should take personally. It's a reflection of their own limitations, their own fear of change. They want to keep you where they feel comfortable, because your evolution makes them confront their own stagnation. What they fail to realize is that you're not stopping. You're becoming something they can't even comprehend, and that's what terrifies them the most. Number 5. They weaponize your past to sabotage your future. When people attack you, one of their favorite weapons is your past. They'll dig up things you did long ago, hoping to use it against you. It's not that they have any genuine interest in those moments. They just don't know how to deal with who you are now. Your present success, growth, or transformation is threatening to them, so they reach for what's familiar, your past mistakes. It's an attempt to discredit your progress, to make others and even you doubt how far you've come. But here's what they don't get. Your past is part of what made you who you are today. Those mistakes, those hardships, they didn't break you, they shaped you. So when they try to use your past as a weapon, they're actually showing their own desperation. They can't compete with the current version of you, so they're clinging to a version of you that no longer exists. What they don't understand is that your past doesn't have the power to define you anymore. You've already learned from it, grown from it, and moved on. The only people stuck in those moments are the ones trying to drag them into your present. It's a distraction tactic. If they can keep you focused on who you were, maybe they can keep you from stepping fully into who you're becoming. Their strategy is flawed, though. By bringing up your past, they only highlight how much you've evolved. They think they're exposing your weaknesses, but what they're really doing is showing how much stronger you've become. Your past isn't a weapon against you. It's proof that you've already overcome more than they could ever throw at you. And that's why their attacks will always fall short. Number 6, your boundaries are unforgivable to the insecure. People get angry when you set boundaries, especially those who once benefited from your lack of them. When you finally decide to stand up for yourself and protect your energy, it feels like a personal attack to those who have been exploiting your kindness or taking advantage of your time. They aren't upset because your boundaries are unreasonable. They're upset because you've stopped allowing them to use you. Setting boundaries shines a light on their intentions. Suddenly they're forced to confront how they've been treating you. When you refuse to let them overstep, it exposes their behavior for what it is, manipulative and self-serving. This is why your boundaries are unforgivable to people who don't have your best interests at heart. To them, your refusal to bend means they're losing control over you, and that's the real issue. What's more, boundaries don't just protect you from others. They also force people to reevaluate their own lives. When you stand firm in your value and say no to being mistreated or taken for granted, it sends a message. It shows that you know your worth, and that makes people who are insecure about their own lives uncomfortable. It's a reflection of what they aren't doing for themselves. So instead of respecting your space, they attack you for it, hoping to make you feel guilty or selfish. But here's the truth. Boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about protecting what matters. And the people who react negatively to your boundaries are the ones who never had your best interests in mind to begin with. By standing your ground, you aren't just protecting yourself, you're exposing the people who only saw you as someone to be used. And while they may not like it, you're better off without them. Number 7. Attacks are invitations to level up. Every time someone attacks you, they unknowingly hand you an opportunity to grow. It's ironic, really. What they intend as harm often becomes the very catalyst for your elevation. Attacks, whether they come in the form of criticism, betrayal, or sabotage, aren't just obstacles. They're chances to refine yourself. The more intense the attack, the greater the potential for transformation. It's like pressure on coal. Without it, there's no diamond. When someone targets you, it forces you to evaluate, adapt, and strengthen your defenses. You become sharper, more resilient, and more self-aware. The resistance you face is essential to your evolution. Without it, there would be no growth. Challenges push you out of your comfort zone, forcing you to dig deeper, think harder, and rise above. In essence, every attack becomes a training ground for your next level. What your attackers don't realize is that by coming for you, they're giving you the tools to become even stronger. Their efforts to break you down only build you up. It's in these moments of struggle that you find your true power. You learn not only how to withstand the hits, but how to use them to your advantage. The very thing they throw at you becomes the fuel for your ascension. And when you come out on the other side, wiser, stronger, and more determined, they're left wondering how their attempts to destroy you only pushed you further ahead. The truth is, their attacks are never about you. They're about their own limitations. But in trying to limit you, they unintentionally elevate you. You level up because of the resistance, not despite it. That's the beautiful irony. They become the unwitting architects of your rise. Number 8, they are obsessed with your light. When people are obsessed with your light, it's not always because of what you've accomplished. It's because of something deeper, something they can't quite grasp. They're drawn to your energy, your inner strength, and the way you carry yourself. It's not about money, status, or outward success. It's about the light you radiate from within. That light can't be measured or touched, and that's what frustrates them the most. They can't figure out how to dim it or replicate it, and that leaves them feeling powerless. Your light doesn't come from external validation. You don't rely on applause, approval, or praise to keep shining. That's why their attacks fall flat. They think that by criticizing or undermining you, they can somehow make you doubt yourself. But what they don't realize is that your sense of self-worth comes from a place they can't reach. It's internal, rooted in who you are, not in what the world thinks of you. This confuses and irritates them. They can't understand how you keep going, how you stay strong, even when they try to bring you down. To them, everything is about external achievement. They believe success is what gives you value. But you know better. Your light is innate, born from your experiences, your resilience, and your inner peace. It's something they can never take from you because it doesn't depend on anything they can touch. Their obsession with your light reveals more about them than it does about you. It shows how lost they are in their own need for validation. And while they waste energy trying to extinguish your flame, you keep shining unaffected because you're fueled by something far more powerful than anything they could ever understand or control. Number 9. Your silence is their worst nightmare. When faced with attacks, your silence becomes your strongest weapon. Those who aim to undermine you are often seeking a reaction, a way to draw you into their drama and validate their own feelings of superiority. They want to provoke you, to see you rattle or stumble, believing that your discomfort will give them the upper hand. But when you refuse to engage, you take away the very power they're trying to exert over you. Your silence sends a powerful message. You won't be dragged down to their level. It shows that you're not interested in their games or their negativity. Instead of responding with anger or frustration, you rise above, choosing to focus on your own growth and goals. While they're busy trying to provoke a reaction, you're busy building a life that doesn't include their toxic energy. In doing so, you rob them of their satisfaction and control. This refusal to engage leaves them fighting shadows. They're left alone with their insecurities, wondering why their attempts to rattle you haven't worked. Their frustration mounts as they realize that their words have no impact on your sense of self. You remain unbothered, and that's what terrifies them. Your calmness in the face of their attacks highlights their volatility, exposing the hollowness of their attempts to tear you down. Moreover, silence can often be more telling than any words. It communicates confidence and strength, a clear indication that you recognize your worth and won't be swayed by their negativity. While they're consumed by their futile efforts, you're quietly thriving, transforming every attack into a stepping stone for your own ascension. In the end, your silence isn't just a lack of response. It's a declaration of independence from their chaos, a reminder that your journey is yours alone, unaffected by their need for drama. Number 10. Their attacks confirm your significance. Every attack directed at you serves as a powerful confirmation of your significance. If you were irrelevant or weak, people wouldn't bother trying to undermine you. The very fact that they invest their energy into belittling you highlights that you are a force to be reckoned with, someone who's
There's no way to prepare for the impact an accident makes on your life. That's why we've spent 40 years getting ready for that moment when you need compassion and immediate action. The right doctors, investigators, our team of experienced attorneys, and your free consultation is already in place. So if you've been hurt, remember, the FARA safety net is right here to catch you. All you have to do is call FARA and FARA. It's what we built. Jacksonville.
Fire, flood, tornado, hurricane. The damage they can cause to your home is devastating. But there's another disaster that strikes when you least expect it. I'm talking about your own insurance company when they deny your claim. If you believe your homeowner's insurance isn't paying what they should, let the lawyers at FARA and FARA review your policy word for word for free. FARA and FARA, here for you, here for good. Jacksonville.